Sonic the Hedgehog released for the Xbox 360 on November 14th, 2006 in North America, November 24th in Europe, and December 21st in Japan. It also released on the PlayStation 3 that same day in Japan, as well as on January 30th, 2007 in North America and March 23rd in Europe. Collectively is referred to as Sonic 2006 and Sonic 06. It features 9 playable characters, 10 uniquely themed levels, and 3 connected hub areas all tied together by 3 parallel stories and the Havok physics engine. The game currently has a 43 out of 100 on average score on Metacritic for its PlayStation 3 version and 46 out of 100 for the Xbox 360 version. It is considered by many, including the hosts of this show, as one of the worst games they've ever played, if not the worst. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 150 of the Sonic Movie Show, the only show that's about Sonic news, and Sonic movie news. My name is Ethan, and with me here to die in the flames of the future is Devin.
They're not dead yet. Glad you went with the death angle, because that's the quote I went with.
Who says that?
I believe
Amy.
I believe Shadow says it, or Eggman. I wrote it during. Well, here's what I wrote. I hate that I can see Eggman's real eyes. I control time itself. They're not dead yet. Rouge and Shadow, let's go. This game is good again.
Okay.
That's how my thoughts are. So I think one of these days for an episode, I'm just gonna drop the notes on Twitter or something, because they only work for how my brain works, and not when you say them out loud. But yeah, I don't remember the context, but someone says it, and I believe it's either Shadow or Eggman. My other quote was just going to be the last quote that Princess Elise says, Sonic, come back to me, to us, and then gives a good old...
Yeah,
but I went with the death route, because that's really how I feel.
Yeah. Well, first off, happy episode 150. We've stuck through it for 150.
We're not dead yet.
Semi-consecutive episodes of this show. It's been a blast, and this episode is all about Sonic 2006, Sonic 06, or Sonic the Hedgehog.
The Hedgehog.
Yeah, exactly. Whew. Man, I don't even know where we really want to begin with this, but I did want to say thanks for people that are listening. If this is your first time listening to this show, welcome. We do lots of stuff on Sonic news, and Sonic movie news, as well as video game movie reviews, and lots of Sonic deep dive stuff. Essentially every 50 episodes. It's probably been a pattern by now. We did what I like to think of as episodes on the start of each of Sonic's eras. I know that there's a whole Sonic fan thing where they say this is the dark era and then this is the modern. I don't use those terms. There's the classic era, which starts with the original Sonic. There's the 3D era, which starts with Sonic Adventure. And I consider this game, Sonic 2006, both the end of the 3D era, because it's everything those games did, culmination of those problems, as well as the start of the HD era, where making these games got expensive and hard. That was the technical difficulties.
And to me, this was also a reboot. I know we'll go into the history shortly here, but to me, from my knowledge, is that this is kind of... There's a reason they called it Sonic the Hedgehog, and there's no subtitle to that. There's no other thing added to it. It's just Sonic the Hedgehog. This is a reboot. We're serious now, kind of.
It is so crazy. And honestly, there's at least one game from 4 years ago that proves this wrong, but I feel like the idea of having one of your future games be just named the original game's name again is you don't do that. Sonic 2006 says you don't do that. I referenced God of War essentially 4 years ago. It's no, here's a good game. And arguably better than any of the other God of War games combined, in my opinion. I didn't even beat that game, and I can tell you that. But Sonic 2006 is if I see a game, if there was a game that was called Super Mario Brothers, it'd be no. Don't, please.
Or imagine if they do a Metal Gear game, they just call it Metal Gear. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm just saying, you're right though, that there's this even with movies too. We've seen movie reboots as well, where they just go back to the original title, and there's that pressure that okay, now you can't get away with being like, oh, it's a sequel or it's a standalone thing. Like, no, this is a reboot. It's a reimagination of the original source material. So like, there's that pressure that you have to execute properly.
Yeah, you want it to be a God of War 2018 and not a Sonic 2006. You want people to
That's
say
honestly
like
the best way to
the
describe
good one
this.
or the old one versus the original or the bad one. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, for sure. But like also, and yes, it was, as we'll talk in the history segment here, it was intended to be a reboot in tone, but it is entirely a continuation of everything they were doing post Sonic Adventure anyway. You know, characters had, while they don't reference necessarily what they had done in previous games, it was a culmination of all those things. This game has 9 playable characters.
People have been asking for Sonic Adventure 3, right? To just playing now all the games. This is Sonic Adventure 3. They just called it Sonic the Hedgehog, but it has all the same ideas, the multiple player playable characters, like you said, the different storylines,
the parallel storylines. Yeah, absolutely. This is the 1, 2, 3, technically either 4th or 5th time they've done this, where there are multiple playable stories that go in parallel. And generally, there's a culmination of that at the end for you to do, you know, and I don't think they've done that since. So really, this does feel like it's the capstone of the end, but also I mean, they made their own video game engine because of this game. Not for this game, after this game, with the Hedgehog engine, right?
Is that really what they call it? The Hedgehog engine?
Hedgehog
Not
engine.
the
it's
Blue
great.
Blur or something a little bit better?
No,
Hedgehog.
I just remember because I played so much Sonic Unleashed, I platinumed that game on PlayStation 3. And yeah, a little picture like when Sonic's rolled up into a ball, but it's just a regular hedgehog, and it zooms into like a square, and it's a cute little sound. Whatever. Yeah, and that was the good engine because its main focus was being able to do all their pre-baked lighting for like levels that are miles long, literally miles long. Like they were able to crank out lighting for a huge level in like a day. So they had to make a bespoke engine just because this game sucked that much. But I want to ask you your general thoughts on this game. And, you know, why don't you tell me I know you never played this game before, for this episode, but what have you known about this game, etc.? And then what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so going in, either from you or just some clips I've seen, I haven't seen like a Let's Play or anything of this. Even though I have seen like the ending cutscene before somewhere. I don't remember when. I just remember seeing Sonic talking to a young girl, and like he tells her to smile more or whatever. Super toxic, by the way. Just remembered that scene.
Which is more toxic, that or her father saying never cry?
Both are equally toxic. Just be happy. It's that easy. So for me, like, my knowledge is very limited besides like clips I've seen, but I've always heard that it's bad, like it's awful. But then, you know, I never played the game, never owned the game, didn't really know anybody who had it or talked about it up until more recently when we started doing this podcast. But then I played Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, 2 first, and the first one. For me, like, okay, this seems like the same vibe going in. So that was just my experience beforehand. But afterwards, I might need to take back a little bit about what I said about the Sonic Adventure games, because that is how bad these games. I had a lot of frustration with the Sonic Adventure 2, the first one I played, and then Sonic Adventure 1 I thought was actually a little bit better mechanical wise, but this game I haven't been frustrated at a video game for a long time, because I'm like, I'm a mature adult now, right? I can't get mad at games. I can get mad maybe for like 5 seconds, but I'm not gonna like. I wanted to break something. I wanted to quit doing this podcast at moments, because I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
But I will say there was some things in this that maybe surprised me. Maybe it's because everything else around it was not good that made me appreciate some things in it. And also maybe appreciate a new release, a new Sonic game, perhaps, just in the couple hours I've played.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that for now as we go into this. But yeah, this is a stinker for sure. If you're coming into this episode hoping for us to gloat about how great this game is, and hey, if you like it, that's cool. That's your opinion. I think we both are going to have very similar opinions. My personal
Yeah.
experience was pain.
So, for me, I did own this game. You actually have my original copy, and I have a reprint that I purchased off Amazon at some point because my original case got destroyed for that. So you have I guess the first PS3 game I ever bought with my own money. So we got our PlayStation 3 in December of 2008. This was a fat model. It's the one that you actually used, but it wasn't the backwards compatible one. So this was right after they dropped that to save them some money. And then I had gotten birthday money and Christmas money because my birthday's in February. February 2009 rolls around. I get some more money, and I buy 2 video games for the PlayStation 3: Sonic the Hedgehog and Uncharted: Drake's Fortune. Now, I love Drake's Fortune.
Right.
And Sonic was just too hard. I don't understand. I was like 2009. How old was I? 14?
Yeah,
I was still in
there.
this weird age where I was not quite online yet. Like, don't get me wrong. I knew where to find porn, but like, I didn't look up video game stuff at all besides cheats. Like, for whatever it is, it didn't click
we didn't
in me to
start
like
playing Steam until like I think around this time. So like, yeah, we were just discovering like multiplayer game. Yeah, just the internet.
I remember finding IGN later that year, and they're like, "Wait, they announced a new Zelda game. I get to know of this before they come out." So I'd played Sonic 06. I had played through the Sonic segment, the Silver segment, and most of the Shadow segment. I know exactly when I stopped playing. And the reason why I stopped was because at some point late in 2009, I was in a GameStop and I just seen the bargain bin another Sonic game. This one was called Sonic Unleashed, and it was cheap. So I begged my mom, "Can I get this? I don't have any money. You want to buy this for me?" And she said, "Sure." And then I never played Sonic 06 again, besides for this episode, freaking, I don't know, over a decade later, right? 13 years later, 12 years later, something like that.
Completely different. We're completely different people. Not completely different people, but you know what I mean? That like,
I mean, we grew a child.
We know how to drive a car now.
That was almost half my life ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would just to end the story, Mom didn't really pay too much attention to what I was doing in a video game or anything like that. But even she noticed, and I mentioned this on this show before, even she noticed that I was somehow looking happy when playing Sonic Unleashed, and she said, "Oh, this one's good, right?" And I'm like, "I guess so." I didn't have a concept of if a game is good or bad. It was just the game's hard. I don't know. I was not a critical thinker for a good chunk of time, even though I feel like people tell these stories of like, yeah, when I was 7, like I knew how awesome Zelda was, and like I knew how to like blah 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 blah, and I had opinions. Like, no, I just had games. I got lucky.
For me, I was the
games,
same way.
Sonic.
I always just assumed if I couldn't beat it, it was really hard. Not that the game is bad.
And I just needed to be better,
Yeah.
But there are definitely bad games that if I had played them as a kid, I might not be a big of a game fan because I would have blamed myself instead of a shitty video game. So that is my history with the game. We come around now, and I would say, wow, yeah, this game is everything I remember about it. However, there is a couple things I'm like, okay. I felt it was very painfully obvious to me playing through this what the culprit is on the game/technical front. There is one gigantic culprit that influences and has its shadowy tendrils in every single facet of this game's development. Then you include what we now know. I've read the history thing that I researched, and I'll read it out in a minute. That the game was on a short timetable and a short budget, and scope kept changing like crazy. all of those things and a stupid bad story that might have been good before they cut so much stuff. I don't know. I don't give a shit. Technical difficulties aside, like polish and production are issues, but the actual game itself has one gigantic source of everything is wrong with this game because of one thing, and that's the fucking physics engine. And I'll talk about that in the history read. The fact that everything you collide into that can be physicsed around, something breaks apart and you stumble into it, and all of a sudden you're standing on it at weird angles, the character pathing, all that stuff. I guarantee they could not find a way to turn some things off without turning it off for everything, so they just let it ride. And that is the source of why this game is as broken and janky as it is. Because some dude, and I have his name, said, oh, let's put in a physics engine in a Sonic game. So, but yeah, I think there's a couple good things to like about this game. Not much, though. And I know there are a contingent of Sonic fans that are younger than us, maybe even really young. And then this might have been the first Sonic game that they played, and I'm sorry. My first Sonic game that I ever played was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube. And then I went back and played a couple of the older ones. And like I started with a game that is generally considered not great, but hype and fun, especially at the time it was released. I cannot imagine being a kid that loved Sonic because of this game. I could not imagine that. So I feel sorry for those kids that have to have this in the back of their head that they need to somehow defend this game. And there's a fan project that's like trying to remake this game. Y'all can let it die. You don't need to remake this game. I thank you for your love and effort for the brand as a fellow fan, but don't waste your time on this.
Thank you for your service, but we don't want you don't have to, you know?
Yeah. Like, I feel like your time is better spent making your own Kirby game so Nintendo can sue you into oblivion is probably a better use of your time than remaking this game. Sega doesn't even like this game.
There's plenty of Sonic fan games. Just all combine forces and make a better Sonic game than maybe Sega has. Who knows? Yeah. I think that'd be
Sonic
cooler.
Mania was in the sense,
I'll play that. But yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't know if after this that we'll play this unironically, I guess I would say. I don't want to leave the door completely closed, but yeah. I don't care who's remade it. No, thank you.
You just don't need to. You just don't need to. I have the history of this game as researched by me on various sources. A couple big shout outs include the Cutting Room Floor, as well as Matt McMuscles did a video on it a couple years ago that I used as a general look of what was going on. Then I researched to confirm these types of stuff. So I'm just going to read through this stuff. Feel free to interject as you would like at any point if you want me to clarify.
I'm just going to say you're wrong after everyone. Be like, you made that up.
Wrong.
You're wrong. Fake news.
No, what I want you to do is after every like paragraph say, wow, you're telling me this for the first time.
I mean, it would be true. That bit will never get old.
Do you agree or disagree? He was a wonderful character and he had a wonderful time. Okay. Development on the game started in 2004 after Sonic Team finished up recent projects, including the Nintendo GameCube game Billy Hatcher. He was a chicken man. I played the demo for that. Not that good. And the PlayStation 2 game Astro Boy, based off the classic Astro Boy character. That game utilized the Havoc physics engine. The main bulk of Sonic Team was tasked to work on rebooting the franchise to set the tone for Sega on the upcoming HD consoles. They were not as big of a third party as they wanted to be, since they were a first party. They figured they would be the dominant third party on platforms, and they weren't. So they tasked Sonic Team to set that straight for them. The game was also planned to be released in 2006, specifically to mark the 15th anniversary of the series, with the goal of it becoming a PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii launch title. Get to that in a bit. The Xbox 360 was coming around the corner too soon for this, so they at least wanted to launch on, a system and be like the hot app, the killer app, as they like to say. You bought your PS4, you bought NAC.
They wanted to be the neck.
Yeah. They made a second one of those. Yuji Naka, Sonic's creator, would be the lead producer on the project, along with producers Yojiro Ogawa and Masahiro Kumuno. The role of director would fall to Shun Nakamura. So Shun Nakamura had been at Sonic Team since Sega Saturn's days and was familiar with a few different roles in the game development sphere. He was just in a bunch of different roles. However, this would be the second title he would personally be the director for. The first being a 2000 Dreamcast rhythm game called Samba de Amigo. It was like a maraca game. They made a sequel to that on Wii. But this is a much bigger game. This is the mascot's game, and it's a reboot. You did a rhythm game in 2000. 6 years later, we expect you to release a killer app.
Yeah, that is a lot of pressure.
It is a lot. Masahiro Kumuno had been at Sega a little bit longer and was responsible for different roles on different projects, including the CG art for Sonic Adventure.
Shout out to the CG art of Sonic Adventure, I guess.
Yeah, remember at the end when when 9/11 happens and they're like, "We saved the city." He didn't need it. He could have toned it down.
Out of all the Sonic games that I've fully played, that is definitely my favorite ending, I think. We saved the city, Patrick.
Everyone died. We don't see anyone. We did it. Yujiro Ogawa worked on a few notable titles at Sega prior to this game, including Phantasy Star on the Dreamcast there. And then a new guy here, Yoshinari Amaike, who was a staff member at Sega, was an artist on so many different things. But in the background, for almost 2 years, he was tinkering with the Havoc's physics engine in a prototype. Sega would recently cancel this and move him on to Sonic 06. So Maike suggested Sonic Team use this physics engine idea for Sonic 06, and it became the core concept behind the gameplay. He wanted an action game where you heavily influenced objects around you. This was also the basis for Silver the Hedgehog's gameplay and why he was created. He went through supposedly 50 different design concepts before they settled on yet another hedgehog, and they named him Silver so that if they ever made a game named after him like they did with Shadow, then it would line up on store shelves in your other Sonic games.
Man, okay, I'll give him credit. This is like, as someone who does marketing, I just find this shit so interesting that they're like, it will work out. Think about it. Think about the long term. At GameStop, you're at GameStop or Blockbuster. Back when Blockbuster was still a thing. Yeah. You're at Blockbuster. The S's are next to each other.
We want to own the letter S on GameStop shelves.
It's going to be Shadow, Silver, and Sonic. One day they'll be there. Or they'll be all sold out. You won't even find a section.
No, it'll just be S will be empty because our games are that good. But yeah, he at one point was a minx. He went to different animal designs entirely before they settled on another hedgehog. I will say, just though, I'm not against his design. He represents a bad video game. If we detach him from that, I don't have anything against him. And it's neat that they gave him something besides being a fast hedgehog. Yeah, he's very trusting. When like fucking a dude literally named after Mephistopheles shows up and says you need to travel back in time and kill someone that looks like you.
Yeah, literally
you just decide you're going to do that.
Who's from like German folklore, a name loosely similar. You're like, yeah, I can trust this guy. I love it.
Development in the HD era was very hard for almost every Japanese company. When consoles can push higher resolutions and more polygons, more effort had to be made on graphics than before, which ballooned budgets. Games made in Japan for a Japanese-only audience would have sales estimates of like 100,000 copies in order to be considered as a success. I remember, you love your Dino Crisis, we love our Resident Evil. I love the games that they made. The director, and I'm blanking on his freaking name. made an awesome PS2 game called God Hand, and he wanted it to be a failure. He said if they sold 100,000 copies of it, he'd be forced by Capcom to make another one of them. And he didn't want that. That game sold 82,000 copies.
Oh, got close.
And he was like, good, I got to make my game and I get to move on. So yeah, a niche game in Japan had a niche budget for it. But when new machines required more people to work on a single game and for longer, budgets would far exceed sales estimates, which is why many niche Japanese games stayed on PlayStation 2 or went to the Nintendo DS or PlayStation Portable, where they had nice small budgets where you needed to make maybe 4 textures total and you could just focus on being weird, and then your games would sell. Monster Hunter would not have been a success if they decided to put it on PlayStation 3 instead of the PSP, right? Because they were able to make a bunch of Monster Hunters. For Japanese games that had a global audience like Sonic, in which these games would sell millions of copies, a ballooning budget must result in even more sales to compensate, which means pressure's on. Your game needs to sell millions more because our budget is a lot higher. I don't have the budget for this game, but it technically kept going down for reasons we'll talk about. As an example of scope, and this is just because I want to talk about like art assets and stuff, right? Because this game is in HD, there's lots of high quality textures, even though you can tell that there is a quality difference there. So as an example of scope, a console's memory dictates how many textures or art assets can be displayed at once, as well as their quality, right? Sonic Team had previously worked on the Sega Dreamcast, which had 34 megabytes of total RAM. The PlayStation 2 had 38. The Nintendo GameCube had 43, and the Xbox had 64, which is a lot compared to its brethren. 64 for Xbox, it was all unified. All the other consoles split them up into different functions. 64 is for Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog. I think that was on Xbox as well. Heroes was at least. That's the most they ever had to work with, but they still had to make it work for the PS2, right? The PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 each had 512 megabytes of RAM.
That's such a big jump. It's crazy to we lived during that, but we were still kind of young, but it's crazy to think about in terms of like that kind of just jump in space. Like just to me, it's like hard to fathom. But then also at this time, you're starting to get like the iPod Touch and shit. You know what I mean? So it's kind of crazy to see that escalation of technology. Just going on a little tangent here, but just like I think about like my grandma when she's like, she lived in a time when cars started to become a thing. Like people owned cars. It wasn't just the rich who owned cars, and then I think about, we haven't had anything like that in our lifetime. But then we forget like of shit like this. It maybe isn't a physical thing. You know what I mean? That is changing necessarily. Like cars all look generally the same as they did 10 years ago. But it's like the little things like this that have changed dramatically in the last decade.
And now we're on consoles that have 16 gigabytes of RAM. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Your PlayStation 2 with 38 megabytes of RAM. I think it equates really to 34 with 4 more that are cached for system use. But 34 megabytes is bigger than most games 2 console generations prior to it. Like in RAM, PS2 could run an entire game. You know what I mean? Not even off any storage media, right? But yeah, 512 megabytes. The Xbox 360s was unified. PlayStation 3 split it in half. Half needed to be used for graphics, which caused issues for some games. Not a culprit for Sonic. I'll tell you that. They had other issues. So you have this much memory. You have higher resolutions and you have bigger polygon budgets you can afford with this. They need to basically make the game look beautiful. And Sega basically didn't give them more people than they really needed. Sonic Team was working on unreleased hardware, which combined with changing design decisions meant that many things that were planned never happened. At one point in the game's development, in theory, it was developed for Nintendo's upcoming Revolution console, which we knew would become the Nintendo Wii. It was announced as Revolution before. But when Sega received the specs from Nintendo of the Wii, they decided they would need to split the team. The Wii is very underpowered compared to the 360 and the PS3, but Sega said, you know what? We're going to make it work. We're going to make this game work on that machine. So they split it in half. They split the team in half. One team, still led by Yuji Naka and Shun Nakamura, who's the director, would develop the game for PlayStation 3 and then also port it to Xbox 360 in parallel. They make a build, works on PS3, port that to 360. Okay, we make more progress on PS3, port that to the 360 build. Work on PS3, make it work on Xbox after the fact. The other team, which was now led by Yojiro Ogawa, one of the producers, would work on porting the game to the Nintendo Wii. Shortly after the split, Ogawa realized there would be no way in hell his team could actually realistically get Sonic 06, even in its current form, running on the Wii. So he proposed to the higher-ups at Sega that his team should work on their own unique Sonic game for the Wii. He would produce and direct this project personally, and it would later release as the title Sonic and the Secret Rings.
Damn, I wonder how that meeting went. Like, was that one meeting, you think? Or was that over a course of a year?
I can't get this to work, and can I just make my own?
Yeah, like, I just wonder... I don't know how, like... I'm imagining it's very bureaucratical in Japanese video game companies. I mean, just a lot of companies are obviously bureaucratical, but some I feel like industries are much more, where it's like, no, we're doing this. You have to do this.
Yeah.
So I just always like these kind of things that, or what could be footnotes on a Wikipedia page or in your notes here, is I always like, I wish I could be a fly on the wall for like, how intense was this? Was it, or were they all cool with it? You know what I mean? We have no idea, but I find this kind of stuff just interesting of like, like, I just think of it like nowadays it'd be like a Zoom meeting where you have to tell your manager being like, I can't do that, but I can do this other thing. Right. It's hard. That's hard to convince.
Yeah.
So I find that,
and I get the feeling Sega at this time was very, no, it can get done type of attitude. Because they didn't replace any of these people that are now no longer working on this game to make something else instead. And I think the fact that Ogawa said he was going to produce and direct the game was like, hey, I will make this one work type of thing. Like, that was his gimme. Like, there's a lot of work to be a producer and director on a video game, you know what I mean? But like, I can make it work. It's crazy that was, I guess, the compromise, make a new game.
Could you imagine if they found a way to get this game though on Wii? Even if you cut the game in half, like you're just playing Sonic's levels, just even that alone would just be an alternate timeline somewhere out there. Would be interesting to see how it would have worked.
If they had a second team that was going to take it and then port it, let's say like it's the finished game and someone said, let's put it on the Wii, you could reduce the polygons, you could lower the quality of all the textures. I mean, the game fits on a DVD because it was a 360 game, so it can fit on a Wii. It's a DVD. It would just, a lot of textures would be replaced with blander ones. They could make it work. I mean, there are better looking games on the Wii than this game, but they were meant for Wii in mind. And, I didn't really go into it, but Sony themselves acknowledge many years later that PlayStation 3 was a demon to try to figure out and learn how to develop for. When Sony themselves says, trying to compare the PS5 to the PS4 and how quick it is to learn how to make a game, they say it takes a couple weeks to learn the kit for PS5. PS4 was a month. They literally say it takes a year to learn the PS3.
Jeez.
And these dudes started when they didn't even know what the specs were for the PS3. You know what I mean? They had 360 ones. They're like, let's start on this. Okay, we get Sony's machine in. It's comparable, very comparable. Okay. But we're working on a completely different architecture than we've ever worked on before with the cell processor and stuff on the PS3. So, yeah, like the fact that, and I mentioned this before, but the second game I bought for PS3 was Uncharted. The fact that game also came out in 2007 and it was that good, is crazy to me. But yes. So after having cut Nakamura's team in half, Sega made a marketing deal with Microsoft, which had then released the Xbox 360 in 2005. The game would now be advertised primarily with the Xbox 360 as the lead platform in the West. An eventual Xbox Live Arcade demo of Sonic 06 was developed, siloed from the rest of the team, based off work that was already been shown at E3 earlier that year. This demo featured many small improvements to the game's camera, character behavior, and animations, but since primary development was on PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 version was being ported in parallel to that version, the demo's improvements were scrapped completely and never re-implemented. People have this demo because it was released online. You could download it on the 360, and like the physics on how Sonic, like his homing attack works and how he collides with like ramps and stuff, feel better.
That sucks. And I feel like this wasn't like necessarily like the wrong move, because Xbox 360 did sell very well, you know? So like in terms of just putting a game onto one of the most popular platforms in North America, I think was a smart move. It just sucks that like they were making it for PlayStation 3 first, you know, and then porting it over.
Yep. Japanese company. They want to make it on the Japanese system. There is that level of...
And I mean, I get it, but like, it's those kind of decisions, you know what I mean, that I think affected this game.
Oh boy.
To a degree.
Yeah. At a late point in development, Yuji Naka left Sega, claiming he wanted to work on new IP, and that Sega put him in many managerial roles, when he just wanted to develop games, which I completely understand, and I know Japanese companies do that. Happened to the Street Fighter dude. He got put into positions he did not want to be in, and then Capcom basically kicked him out by putting him in shitty positions they knew he didn't want to do to convince him to quit. So I don't think Naka is being dramatic about how he wanted to make games, and
this
they
happens
didn't
in
let
other
him.
industries too. I know people who've shared similar things, people who've worked, older people than me, but people who have worked in, you know, different industries and whatnot, who've worked there for, you know, 20 years, and all of a sudden, you know, new leadership comes in or whatnot. Oh, let's put them in shittier positions, or keep asking more and more responsibilities to the point where they just quit. I mean, you see that a lot with like mergers, or you get bought by a new
all of a sudden
billionaire,
roles are redundant. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no more working from home.
Oh my god.
Sorry. I'm not pointing any fingers, by the way. All right.
Let's point fingers at Sega here, because when Yuji Naka left, he took people with him. Hey, when the coolest dude on your team leaves and says he's going to make his own game company, not only does this like not happen, like this doesn't happen in Japanese game companies. You worked there until you die, and they treat you well. If this is what you want, they treat you really well. It's what I've always heard. The only thing comparable that I've ever heard of is composers and stuff. Like the legendary Final Fantasy composers, or composers here, composers there, they often left their companies to basically make their own company that they can be contracted to, where they can retain like rights to their music that they make. There are more rights in video game music than there is on the code that the game is worked on. You know, like Nobuo Uematsu is on the Spotify listings of Final Fantasy albums and not Square. You know what I mean? Because he wrote the songs, he arranged the music. So, but when Naka left, he took people with him. So at this point, Nakamura's team is a fraction of what it was. But since Sega continued to demand that the game release in 2006 to coincide with the series' 15th anniversary, they got the Xbox 360 version out the door in 2006, as well as the PlayStation 3 version in Japan. Numerous critics lambasted every bit of this game, and it supposedly hangs, metaphorically, as a specter in the minds of everyone at Sega to this very day.
You made that very, like a tale as old as time kind of thing. Into this
supposedly
day,
like
every full moon,
it haunts them. Yeah,
the Sonic 2006 ghost.
It's a reminder. I mean, like,
yeah.
We'll get into our opinions on it, but like they went so rock bottom that like we wouldn't have irony Sonic Twitter without this. I really don't think so. If this was Mario, or if Mario had that Twitter thing, like I wouldn't believe it, because like their games are all good. Like there's maybe that are like okay, skippable, but Mario games are all good. So I wouldn't believe the self-deprecating humor. I do with Sonic because I made fun of you myself. All right, this next segment, let's go over like the 9 different playable characters, talk a little bit about them, what we think about each and every one of them, and that the list keeps going on and on. So we have Sonic here. He's our blue dude. He runs, he jumps, he homing attacks, he slides. He got the bounce.
He kicks and punches, right? Or no, that's Sonic Frontiers, right?
That's Frontiers. No,
should have
your
played
main...
Sonic Frontiers and Sonic 2006 back to back.
As soon as I finished 06 here, I'm like, finally, I get to play this game. Been waiting for it. No, Sonic's main, his only really attack is the homing attack.
I mean,
like,
you
yeah,
should be using the homing attack regardless, because
Yeah.
it's the most OP,
Yeah.
one of the most OP actions in this game that you can do.
But it also can overpoweredly throw you off a cliff and kill you. So, but he has segments in which the game puts you at Mach speed, where you can't slow down. Sonic must speed up, and you touch anything and he takes damage, even rocks or grass or anything, and those suck. Oh boy, one thing that actually I will mention. I wanted to confirm this, so I went over this before starting to compile these notes. I booted up my Sonic save state or Sonic, story segment, having already beaten the game, and I'm like, I just want to make sure, like, they had the shop thing, and like you bought 2 things or 3 things from it, and I went back there, and there's new things in there, all these gems. They change his shoes, and they give you custom actions. So Sonic, you can press R1 for custom actions. A lot of these are dumb, but one of them is so hilarious that they thought people would even be able to play this way. You know that Mach speed thing? You press R1 and he just instantly starts running at that speed, no matter where you are.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
you touch anything and he falls down. I'm like, well, they didn't think about this. There aren't many segments in Sonic's gameplay where you can go straight and have control. Because while like Sonic Adventure kind of started the like segments where Sonic's running through a loop-de-loop and you kind of just watch it. Sonic Adventure 2 is like, he's grinding on this rail and you kind of just watch it. This game has so many long segments where you can leave the controller down and he's like the beginning of Wave Ocean and he's running on his own and he's sliding on his own and it's course correcting where he needs to go.
And you
you're not
should,
doing
because
anything.
if you try to fight it or try to
die.
like, you die. Yeah, you get punished for it. Yeah.
So, that's Sonic's gameplay there. A lot of it is kind of just, I'm just going to guide Sonic gently in where I want him to go. And then he kind of gets there, right?
And when you say the Mach speed, is that like at some end of his the stages where he's flying, basically?
Yeah.
It feels like and you have to like time everything, or if you hit like one wall, you just fly off the map and die. Yeah, I hate that shit. That was a really bad decision. It was already tough playing as him mechanically, but it wasn't like so bad, but it was very brutal to like play through a tough stage, couple levels, and like let's say you have, there's many moments where I found all the 1-ups you can possibly find. I went over the top on collecting rings to give myself a chance to beat the Mach speed levels, and it took me a long time to realize the Mach speed levels is don't move as much as possible. Don't do the thing where you
don't go for rings.
Circle. Don't go for
just
rings.
Make
don't
sure
press
you have
circle.
a ring.
Yeah, just a ring, and honestly, try to slow yourself down. And I feel like we've talked about this in all our Sonic kind of game reviews and Sonic as a whole, is that in a game where you're supposed to go fast, I don't know why they always try to punish you for that. Like,
yeah,
They keep making that mistake, and I just wish like, and like you were talking about, oh, you're not really playing the game, you're on like a rail, you're on a roller coaster. I'm actually okay with that. I'd rather have that and not let me do any inputs for that section or pretend I can do it, I guess. But you can't go from that and then also go to that Mach speed level after grinding what is sometimes 12 minutes worth of gameplay to get back to that point, and you die and you have to start all over again.
These levels are long.
It's some bad decisions, I think, in just that kind of stuff for me that really like grinded my gears, because it's such a long, some of the stages, especially towards the end of the Sonic story, 12 minutes, 14 minutes.
Yeah,
and then you die on that section again and then you just want to get back to that section.
Yeah.
And then you start struggling in the sections you were doing fine on because you've done them a million times. And then it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So well,
it was never fun to begin with. But
no, but you know what I mean? That it just gets worse and worse.
I have a theory. So one of the things that they cut, and there's a noise there. I believe that this was something that gave them in the 13th hour, right, an issue, and it was implemented in the game fine. They were like, okay, this is cool, it's fine, but something came up. We have 0 time to fix it. Just remove it. So you know how there's the item boxes, you can get rings or a 1-up. Occasionally there's an invincibility thing. I think I found like the speed up shoes once
or twice.
Yeah, but like
not worth
the game
it.
doesn't actually have running segments. And I think the issue is because these levels are multi-purpose for other characters that are not fast. So one of the things in here that they cut at the 11th hour is in the manual here, and it is the shield item. If you might remember, I don't know if this pops up in the camera for you, Devin.
You can kind of see it's a little glary.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I
you remember in Sonic Adventure and Adventure 2, you could get like a green bubble shield that goes around Sonic.
Yeah.
You get hit once, nothing happens to you, but the shield goes away. That's in the game, but it's disabled. And I looked into this. Cutting Room Floor explained how it worked a little bit. So an item box has a value associated with it. 1 equals this item, 2 equals this item, 8 equals the shield. So they must have just went and said, replace all the ones with 8 with a different number. And I think, and this is my hope, someone said, hey, this game is hard because it sucks. Like, let's give a lot of 1-ups around.
Especially towards the last couple levels.
There's just a lot of them. And I'm totally fine with that. I'm rocking nine 1-ups towards the end of a level. I'm like, cool, this is going to carry over to the next one when I don't know what I'm doing. I'm down with this, you know.
When you get to the Mach speed level and you die 7 times and you're like, wow, I'm glad I had the 9 lives.
You're gonna hate me when we describe Kingdom Valley. I just did that first try. That
Fuck
Mach
you.
speed one, I'm like,
fuck you.
Yes. I'm like, oh my god, I remembered that one.
Oh,
Like, yes.
that one kicked my fucking ass so many times. That was the first point where I really thought about quitting. Was that section there. I'm like, I've done this. I got on the Eagle so many times. I'm tired of Silver and his fucking floating. Stop.
Yeah.
But
So that's Sonic's gameplay. We have Shadow the Hedgehog next. All hail Shadow.
Yeah, we're on Team Shadow. Team Shadow.
He's very similar to Sonic, except his homing attack is not consecutive. He kind of does
if you hold it, if you
random
spam
punches.
it too, that's what kind of does that punch.
Yeah. He has a couple different attacks. One of my favorites is, again, my theory, we can't get this to work correctly, so we're going to stop here because it doesn't break anything. If you jump in the air and you hold down square, he does his like chaos spear thing. He throws this bolt of light down, but you can just hold it down. He just hangs in the air forever. You just hold it.
Oh, I didn't even try.
I've done that on boss fights to avoid damage. You remember when it's in Flame Core's boss, the Iblis thing, where it's a giant magma worm, and one of its attacks is it just shoots a bunch of rocks at the platform you're standing on. It only hurts you if you're standing on it. So I just stand up and hold him there, and I'm just hanging down. He's in his goofy pose, and then I release it when I want to land.
Wow, I did not figure out that loophole. I should have.
He'll stay there forever. It's awesome. It's so stupid. He can also press R1 when his gauge is full up to just get stronger. He's red. That's something you can level up, I'm pretty sure, with items from the shop. Yeah. Bad game, okay. All hail Shadow. Yeah, and he has vehicles. There's
which
a
I was not expecting. It was just the most fun. This is I mentioned at the top of the show that I'm like, there's some cool, fun stuff in this that maybe felt more fun because of how everything around it was worse. I actually enjoyed a lot of the shadow levels and had more fun with the shadow levels to the point where I'm like, this should have been Shadow's game. You should have had me start playing this game as Shadow because I might
we
have.
could talk about like the story and stuff,
Yeah,
but
but I just with like the vehicles are fun. Some of them I weren't worth using, but most of them were fun and goofy. I felt his mechanics were more controlled. I felt more in control of what I was doing with him,
yeah.
like especially with the platforming. I was able to do jumps easier and stuff like that. And be able to kill enemies, I feel like quicker and felt more fun. Uh, so for me, like I really enjoyed the shadow levels for the most part. There's still some BS that I didn't like, but overall, compared to all the other characters, I think Shadow was my favorite to play as in terms of the hedgehogs,
The hogs.
the hogs. But yeah, I just really like Shadow's section, and I just wish that was the part you played first because I could imagine me as a kid like being like, can we return this game if I just played the Sonic parts? To be honest with
I
you,
can
but if
see
you let
that.
me
I
with
can
the
see that.
Shadow, I'd be like, oh wow,
All right, well,
I remember
you
Sonic.
hooked me right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game, came out the year prior, and that had vehicles in it. It also had guns, and they took the guns away, which is
Mm-mm-mm.
probably for the best because Ratchet and Clank, that game was not. But yeah, he plays very similar to Sonic, but he just has more. He can't spin dash like Sonic can, and he can't do the stupid basketball bounce, but whatever.
I didn't. I barely did the spin dashing with Sonic. I did the
Yeah.
bounce when I was like fighting like some of the bigger robots because you can kind of
Oh,
just
really? I didn't even think about that.
kill them
Um,
easier that way. But
Shadow's vehicles are a Jeep, a hang glider, a motorcycle, and a hovercraft thing,
the
all of which shoot
motorcycle was
guns
very
or.
very hard to control.
Yeah, I didn't like that motorcycle. I did not like the motorcycle. The hang gliding sections are interesting. I feel like that was again they wanted to be something more, but for whatever reason they couldn't, so they made it very bare bones. I feel like you could just set the controller down and just you go straight and then you win. But I'm not against that idea for his stuff. Now we get to Silver the Hedgehog, the crux of the faults of this game, and it's sorry, Silver, this is all your fault. Your stupid physics engine. Silver the Hedgehog is not a fast hedgehog.
You could have just lived with the evil demon that rules your planet. You
Yeah,
could have just took one for the team instead. You had to go back in time and start all this whole thing. Sheesh.
um, uh, he's telekinetic. He can pick up stuff and throw things. So his gameplay on paper sounds fun. In practice, it's boring. You pick something up, you throw it at an enemy. It doesn't die, you just repeat the same thing. Some enemies shoot rockets at you, and you can stop them in the air and throw them back. That's fun, but his gameplay is boring. It doesn't.
Unfortunately, Half-Life exists.
Right. Well, not only does Half-Life exist, but like you're doing them in more interesting ways than just pick up and throw. You know what I mean? With that gravity gun in that game. You're doing clever things with that.
I know, but I'm just saying that's around the same time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So.
Oh, and like the popularity, like don't get me wrong, is why they went with Akaime's suggestion of using his physics idea that he'd been tinkering on for 2 years. But you can stand on a box and you can pick the box up and ride the box around. There are random spots on the ground that you just tap the button and just stuff happens. Okay, whatever. Set piece stuff. You know, the tower refixes itself, that kind of boring stuff. He's unremarkable. But the fact that he's slow means that you're having more control over the character. I really does feel like an action platformer in that sense, but like it wasn't what I was looking for. And I would not be against a Silver the Hedgehog video game. They can't ever do one because of this game. Like they won't, but if it was successful, I would have seen a Silver the Hedgehog game and I wouldn't have been that upset with the fact that it exists, but like it would have been better than just the basic pick up and throw. It's not creative.
I wish too, like with his hovering, I wish that was a little bit cleaner too, because there was times when I think I can make a distance and then I don't or had to be
Mhm.
standing on something to then make that distance. Like it's both you're able to hover long enough, but I feel like you have to like some of the
It feels a little
spots.
bit too far of a distance you
Yeah,
can go where you're not quite sure if you can make it. You're right. You're right.
it needs to be a
Um,
little bit easier.
and he kind of just drops like a stone when you run out. You don't really
Because
have
he doesn't have a jump. He just either you jump and then
you hover.
hover
You
or you
know,
don't.
if they allowed you to jump out of the hover,
That would have
then the
been nicer.
platforming would, because then you have a way to save yourself if you didn't quite make it. A little bit of forgiveness with that regard. But so those are our three main boys. We have our fun-loving boy, our angsty boy, and our naive boy. Now let's move on to all the side characters that outnumber
I thought
our
you were
three
talking about
main
Tails for a
characters.
second. I'm like, I wouldn't call
No.
him angsty.
Tails plays, I guess, kind of similarly, perhaps, maybe, to his Adventure 1 ish, in the sense that he runs around vaguely at Sonic speed, a little bit slower, and he can fly up, and then he gets real tired and drops like a fucking boulder.
Kind of like Silver. At least he can go farther, I feel like, than Silver can.
He
But,
can go up, at least.
yeah.
And for whatever reason, they're like, what can he do as an attack? Let's take one of our existing art assets and make that a bomb. So he throws item boxes.
Which also tanks your frame rate every time you throw it.
So you just don't do it. So in the Tails sections, like when the very first Sonic level where they stop you to play as Tails, and then later you play that entire level as Tails again, like you just fly past everyone. just fly past
keep
everyone.
Moving. Just keep moving. Not worth
Exactly.
it.
Actually try to go for a record that's under 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It tanks the frame rate is right. If any
But it
one
is
of those
helpful
explodes,
when there's like 10 enemies below you and you can just dive bomb all of them. Because you can
you
just
don't even
spam
need
it
to
endlessly.
look. Yeah, just kind of just drop them down. Yeah, and then hey, if your camera's not pointing at the ground, it's not drawing what's there, and you save a little bit on the frame rate. But one bomb tanks your frame rate. 2 bombs drops it into single digits. So, let alone the fact that you're now trying to pick up rings that aren't real, and actual rings are affected by the physics as well, and it's confusing and ugh. But yeah, Tails is. I would have cut Tails. Next up we have Knuckles.
Damn, you're cutting Tails.
I would cut Tails. Yeah, that's my first cut. Knuckles is up next. He's very similar to Sonic Adventure 2. He runs pretty much as fast as Sonic. He can glide. I think he can dig in the wall. Maybe I'm forgetting, but he can glide and climb.
Glide and climb, I think, is all he can do. It's a little bit more bare bones compared to his Sonic Adventure 2 counterpart. I didn't mind these levels because they're easy if you know where to go.
You just fly and climb, yeah, right? He doesn't have any levels himself. He's just a part of 2 Sonic segments, or maybe 3. Yet in the game's files, there are end-level poses that he does and voice lines for the different ranks, even though you can't actually roll the end of the game or end of the level as him. But he's very basic, and I would have cut him too. They included him just because they felt they needed to. Same thing for the story. These 2 didn't need to be in this game at all, in my opinion. But next up, we have very similar. We have Rouge the Bat, fan favorite of one of us. Yeah, you.
I try to like low key be thirsty on our Twitter just for Rouge. By the way, so if you see him, that's on purpose. It's called branding.
I forgot. Knuckles can punch.
That's right.
That's the thing. Because Rouge doesn't punch, but she plays like Knuckles, but she can throw bombs, including just a whole bunch of bombs at once, and she's one of the easiest to fly around as because you can kill things quick, but she has the same issue Tails has, where when you go to hold down the throw the bomb button, like you don't have a reticle and you're kind of just guessing, and it's sometimes you throw it right in front of you. Ugh, but yeah, she's there. I would have kept her.
For me.
Explain why. For you. Next we have...
Honestly, to Sonic, Shadow, Silver, and Rouge, that's all you really need.
Yeah. Next you have... I think his name is E123 Omega. I don't know if this is the Omega from Sonic Heroes, and he's not Gamma from Sonic Adventure, but it's that idea.
I got confused of at first, but yeah.
He's just a robot, in a sense.
He's also a bird.
His gameplay is kind of like Gamma's or Tails is from Sonic Adventure 2, where you can hold a button and it quote unquote locks on, even though it doesn't, to whatever's in front of you, and he just shoots lasers and he can hover and jump. I would have cut him too, but I feel like he could actually be useful in the story, so maybe we'll keep him, but maybe not as a playable character in this hypothetical better version we have in our minds. But yeah, he's very boring, and honestly, when he popped up in the story, I'm like, oh, okay, it's like a reference or whatever. It's weird that they're not touching on this. And then later, like, he pops up in the story again. I'm like, oh, please don't tell me we're going to play as him. And then you start in a boss fight with him, and then you play
Against,
a level as him later.
Mephiles, yeah.
Yeah. Mephistopheles. I'm like, no, don't do this.
Omega versus Satan. Who wins?
Next, we have Blaze the Cat, a returning character. She was in Sonic Rush, the DS game. And I remember...
This is my first introduction to Blaze, besides Sonic Forces.
This is many.
She was in that.
She was not in Sonic Forces.
Oh, sorry, that was the other cat creature, probably.
I saw a very upset Sonic Tumblr user's long post. I read the whole thing, so shout outs to you. You got my read. That she was trying to defend Sonic 06, saying that it is canon, and she used Blaze as an example, and I did not make this connection, because I remember going into the game initially, I'm like, Sonic Rush is out, but I haven't played it. I know there's this cat girl, and she's supposed to be Sonic from another dimension. She has her own version of the Chaos Emeralds, like that's what the story is, Sonic's in her world or something. And then I play Sonic 06, I'm like, and this game just says, no, you know what? Instead, she's Silver's sidekick from the future in our world. I'm like, oh, so they just changed it completely. And then I read this Tumblr thing, and it makes sense. At the end of Silver's story, we can talk about when we get there, she gets sealed in another dimension. And at the end of the whole game, the events of the story are completely wiped from everyone's memory. So she's in another dimension, and she believes she's from there. Apparently, is how they tie those two games together.
Wow.
Yeah, so
there's a multiverse, huh?
That legitimately makes me, I'm like, okay, you get some props, because like the lines do line up, and it doesn't seem like it's a game theory. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah. I can believe that because the game was like a year apart from each other or something. So she plays exactly like Sonic.
Did you Blaze for Blaze?
Oh, I blazed for Blaze. No.
Okay.
Blaze, I will say this is the best character to play as, because imagine Sonic, but can double jump and homing attack, which makes it easier to cross gaps. You jump again, you homing attack, and you're on the ground.
Took me a little bit to get used to her first couple levels, but then once it clicked, that was fun.
Yeah. I was like, okay, so this is Sonic but better. But once again, this is a sidekick character that's used for a level or two. Yeah. Then we have Amy, who I was also surprised that she was I remember she was in this game, but I was surprised that she was playable at all. Apparently she can just go invisible.
That's how she stalks Sonic. I think that's the lore behind it.
Yeah. they've changed Amy from not being the creepy stalker, like obsessed with the boy, into a different person, now. So
she's still
good for that, but...
at least on her end, the love interest of Sonic. And spoilers, obviously, I mentioned it earlier, doesn't matter, whatever, it's an old game. Princess Elise gets to smooch Sonic, and Amy doesn't.
She watches,
and it's for the fate of the universe. Imagine your crush getting kissed to determine the fate of the universe. If that's not fate telling you y'all ain't supposed to be together, I don't know what is.
Can I also add one more wrinkle too? I'm going to imagine that all of these animals are like adults or something. At least a 17, dog. An underage girl kissed your crush. Stupid Elise.
Because they and I'm just maybe this is part of the stuff that was cut, but like Amy and Princess Elise at moments have conversations about Amy keeps saying, yeah, I'm looking for my boyfriend kind of thing. You know what I mean? And she's like, yeah, I'm looking for mine too. Oh, it's a crush? Oh, ha ha ha. Like, just so stupid. But like they never talk about it again, and then she kisses him. Where's the drama?
She doesn't have that realization. You're right, because it's played as a joke, like, haha.
And I thought they were foreshadowing to be like, oh, later on they're gonna have that like not altercation, but just like conversation, be like, oh, we're chasing the same boy.
Yeah. Oh my god, it was probably cut like so much in this game, but yeah, she has a hammer. The hitbox on this hammer is like a centimeter in front of her.
You have to be close.
Basically, if you're getting hit yourself, then you're close enough to hit back. Yeah. You can go invisible, which I'm surprised that works. I'm surprised enemies forget where you are when you go invisible. I'm surprised that this game, that's held together by sticks, leaves, and Elmer's glue, actually has that work. But yeah, that's what she does. So those are our 9 playable characters. Yeah, I would have kept Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, Rouge just for Shadow's story, Blaze just for Silver's story, and that's it.
Sonic, nothing.
No, because Tails and Knuckles they just accompany him for a part, and then that's it. Then they just disappear.
I mean, I really think they should have made Rouge more present. I think throughout the plot. Maybe give her a couple more extra levels. I don't know. Maybe like a whole chapter. I think maybe the longest one. Maybe like a good 30 hours. Just kidding.
Making an RPG, level her up. Okay, we've talked about our characters, but these action characters got to perform their actions in action stages, aka levels. So we have the back of the game box says 10. There's 9, but they count the end of the world as a 10th one, even though it's just a purple bloom light over the previous levels. So we can talk through them.
Advertising.
I have them in the order that Sonic plays through them in. First, we have Wave Ocean. The first level, the one that's supposed to, kind of set the tone, set the stakes. And in traditional Sonic fashion, it's supposed to be the easiest and the most fun to play through to trick you, right? Yeah. Wave Ocean, I feel like it's boring.
It's definitely not my favorite of the opener levels for sure.
Yeah. It has a lot of loop-de-loop segments that you can walk through. That's one thing many people notice right away. My theory, again, is the character pathing on what they can stand on, how they collide with the world, is tied to the physics because Silver needs to be able to stand on a box that is being moved. Silver needs to be able to stand on a sphere that is being moved. Therefore, they have to stick to a surface. Therefore, the loop-de-loop is that surface. Therefore, Sonic can walk through a loop-de-loop. That is my theory about that. I think it's tied to the fucking physics. It has a random forced segment where you have to play as Tails because Sonic is holding on to a whale that is in control over its entire body, yet somehow Sonic thinks he's stopping it from escaping. Who cares? The gate goes down, and the whale could just swim under it.
It's a whole subplot because he's trying to escape SeaWorld, which we know is fucked up, and Sonic's part of the problem.
Sonic is. This isn't even a resort. This is just the sea. And he's keeping this
open water,
I get it.
Sonic.
Yeah. Why are there random fenced buoy areas? Let him be free. Why are Eggman's robots here? We could talk about Eggman too at some point as well. But yeah, it ends with a Mach speed segment, and they try to do branching things. There's a cave you can go into off a ramp. Good luck. You're going to die before you get there, but good luck. Yeah. There's like a 1-up in there or something. You spent all yours just to get it, so good job. I died a lot to that. I'm like, oh, I remember this. That's Wave Ocean. Other characters play in it as well, and I think Shadows is in reverse. Blaze just plays through Sonic's ad nauseum. Tails just plays through Sonic's again ad nauseum. Yeah, and Silver just kind of runs through some sections and is boring. besides Wave Ocean. Good music, though, I will say.
That was one thing. I feel like the game's music overall is pretty decent. There's some tracks I liked more than others, but that's definitely not a con. But I feel like Sonic games typically don't have bad music. I think that's like besides Forces. So I feel like they always do a good job with music. So that's one thing they didn't miss. The composer showed up.
Yeah, all 4 of them, literally. Next, we have Dusty Desert, which consists of an outside desert area with falling over ruins and an inside ruin area filled with shitty platforming and billiards. This is where Sonic runs holding Elise in his segment, and I just feel like that makes it OP because you can just hold down the don't hurt me button and just make sure you don't let that meter run out and you just survive.
Yeah.
Silver playing billiards made me want to quit. I legit could not get that final thing done. I'm like, these billiard balls, they count down whenever you use them. They count down even if you don't use them, just slower. And I can't get it to work. I was like, I have footage of me just like, the game is just sitting there running for like an hour because I left. I'm like, I can't. I don't know how.
I don't want to say I didn't struggle, but I did notice like I wasn't sure if it was counting down because of time or if it was by section where you're like, no, you're not supposed to be that good at it. Because like the last one, the very long one right before the ending, it's like almost like an L Tetris piece, right? It goes down a ramp, then goes left, down a hallway that has pits. But I found a way where I could hit it once, get it down to the start of that hallway instead of twice, which I think the first time I did, I get twice. And that was one short. So I'm like, okay, I think I got to get this section at 1. And every time I hit it down there, it would just go down to 8 every time. So I'm wondering if it's by like, you're not supposed to.
It could be like that, yeah.
You're not supposed to get it to, there's no way this is. So I feel like I got kind of the physics, but it was always like, I had to just be active on it. But it did take me like a good 15 minutes. I'm not going to lie about that.
Oh, it took me forever.
But I don't know.
Upset. Yeah, so. I had learned that like
it's an interesting idea for sure, but not in a Sonic game, please.
No. I mean, again, you take this physics idea, you throw it into a new game, and you leave Sonic alone. Then you can have your billiards. That's all I'll say about it. There's a segment where Shadow rides, I think it's the hovercraft, over the desert, and you're supposed to ride through posts. And I didn't try this out, but I'm like, if you know where the exit is, what if you just went there first? But I'm sure it would have been one of those, like, the door doesn't open
Because I drove through it, because the first time I did, I kept driving everywhere, I couldn't find anything, and then I died from enemies or whatever, or it blew up because I kept crashing into shit.
I had Shadow flip, and you just go sideways, and then just sink straight through, like, as if there's no ground. I'm like, I broke the game. Glitch number
But then when I went through, I definitely went past the part where all of a sudden now it's open. So it's definitely like, nope, you got to follow this, or whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah, don't forget the Gamma segment where you just dial hop because the character sucks. So, yeah. Next, we have White Acropolis. This is the level that taught us, oh no, the game doesn't autosave after the minigame stuff, which we'll get to later. But it begins, for Sonic at least, with snowboarding, and it's terrible. The snowboarding in Sonic Adventure is SSX tricky compared to this game, you know?
And it sucks because I like the music on this level. I like the idea. I think, was it in Sonic Adventure we had the snowboarding level? And that was actually one of the fun levels in that game. So it sucks that like they executed this really bad. And that fucking snowball or whatever that comes down when you're Sonic.
And you can't see where you're going.
Can't see where you're going. And then the camera will cut to then seeing where you're going.
And then you make a hard left or something like that.
Because the game doesn't register that you're already holding down a button when it switches, I've noticed. So I was going forward to keep going forward when the ball's rolling, but then when it switches the camera, I'm now turning. The reason you turn left is because you're holding it down and the angle is weird, but then all of a sudden you run into something and you die.
Yep, or you don't have any momentum to hit the ramp at the end. And you're like,
you die.
Yeah, so you just got to let go. I think I'm towards that part. Let go. That's the theme of this game. If you're doing good, it's because you're not holding your controller. But yeah, White Acropolis kind of sucks. There's a giant I'm saying giant as if I mean it's big by any measure, but there's an open area at the end that sucks. That's when the shadow part there sucked. You got to destroy the towers to open the door, and you have to be in the car to do so. And I just
in the car,
aimless,
is the best, but...
aimless.
But then later on, when you go through there, is who do you go through there as? I think it's Silver. You go through there again, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if the ending's in the same spot. So I just avoided everything, went to the same spot, and got it. There's so much more open space of shit to do because it's copy and pasted. But yeah, you can just go finish the level by just avoiding everything and just.
And that's the thing, right? Most of these action stages, these levels are just two different levels that they fit the gameplay styles of all 9 characters or whoever is playing on it, right? Like Sonic, Shadow, and Silver. Sonic and Shadow play the same enough, as well as Blaze, but then everyone else is in the slower, more platformy stuff. So we have, sometimes it's a different level using the same assets for them, or sometimes it's just a part of the Sonic level is meant for them, etc. Right? So yeah, it's all these action stages are like that. But moving on from White Acropolis, we have Crisis City. Now this is the level that Sonic Generations used to represent the game, and it is unique. I get it. It's the future. Everything's on fire, and there's worms and bats and golems, and no one's happy.
It's hell on earth, basically.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's so hot that you can't really exist. And hey, we haven't seen anyone besides Sonic and Blaze in the future, so
yeah. But they kept saying, the way they talked as if
there are communities hidden.
There's yes. There you go. I'm more interested in that. Show me more of that kind of stuff.
It's like The Last of Us going on.
Yeah.
Just fucking white hedgehog and pink cat are like, we're going to go stop a fire demon.
And they're just hallucinating. They're like, bro, it's
just a plague,
burning.
dude.
It's just the plague.
But yeah, I mean, you got buildings, you got cars. There are... I love the floating highway segments that have cars spawn on them. And sometimes the cars spawn before the ground, so they just fall, and then the ground shows up because you went too fast.
And then they spawn in again.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
So
I didn't mind these levels. There was some BS here and there, but it wasn't. It felt more complete than some of the other levels, or at least more finishable, if that makes sense. It's just for the Sonic part, it was once again the Mach speed section of this that sucked, and maybe
the tornado.
Ruined my experience of the rest of the level. If it
that
just
tornado's carrying a car.
Yeah, if it completed before that Mach speed, I think that this Crisis City stage would be my favorite stage. I think I just had to keep replaying it because I had to keep fucking getting back to that Mach speed level. That's just total BS. So,
was not a fan of it myself. Next up is the least interesting level, in my opinion, Flame Core. It's just a volcano stuff. It's boring. It's lots of lava.
I hate lava. I'm so sick of lava, man.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
It ends on an unnecessarily long boss fight for Sonic and Shadow. There's a random segment where just Knuckles shows up, or just Rouge shows up and says, I'll do this. Before playing through it as Shadow, you get to that room that Sonic had, and Knuckles gets to just hit all the orbs, and Rouge does it. I died as Rouge, so then I go again, and for whatever reason, I was just able to jump behind Rouge, and then I just did it as Shadow. So I glitched it.
I was able to do that with
as Shadow.
Kingdom Valley. I noticed with Sonic, you can go around Silver, and you can try to play it, but I couldn't get to it. I was like, oh shit, can I like? But the thing is, you have to like some of the jumps you just can't do as Sonic.
I gotcha. But you can do this segment
maybe
as
you can
Shadow.
in a speed run. That's one thing about this game is I want to see a speed run of this at some point.
I purposely held off because I didn't want to make the game seem easy in my head before we.
I'm just curious
of
how glitchy and stuff. That I bet there's got to be some wild shit in this that people found.
And I'm not interested in the if you like walk through the seam, you end up in the end credits. I don't care about that stuff. But like, show me how to break this game in a way that's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, I skipped Rouge, and it's funny at the end. You like get to the door or whatever, and then it shows you cutting back to Shadow, and he says, "Thanks, Rouge," or something like that. And I'm like, "No, dog, you did it yourself." So, and it was tough.
It was her presence.
Yeah,
You know, they got it done.
it was tough. I had to use enemies to homing attack to get onto platforms. So if I fucked that up, I would be stuck. But I did it. I did it. Um, it's Silver's final level too, which is interesting, which makes thematic sense. He has to fight, Iblis at the end there. But
Iblis trigger.
The Iblis trigger must be destroyed. But yes, it's Flame Core. It's my least favorite level. Next up, Radical Train. Such a dumb level. It's not that radical.
Interesting idea. Awfully executed. Executed.
Depending on what's going on, for Sonic, Eggman and Elise are on a train that's also going to crash several times, so you have to make it not crash and catch up. Shadow is just trying to stop Eggman on it. The ending with Shadow, like, that's where I stopped as a kid. There was this level as Shadow, because I'm shooting on the motorcycle, the train at the end, and it's just not taking damage. I didn't realize you had to like somehow hit the side of it. That's how you win. You hit the side of it.
Yeah, the first time I got to that end section where you're supposed to shoot it, I kept shooting it, and then eventually it just stopped taking damage, and then I lost. Yeah. It got away. But then I did the next time, and I feel like I did it the exact same way, and this time it blew up instantly. Like, it was like quick. I'm like, I don't know what I hit, if I hit a critical
the back
hit on
of
it or
the head
but...
of the train, so the front car of the train, the engine or whatever, the back of it doesn't take any damage. It's the sides of the front. When it makes a turn, that's how I did it. I just by accident hit a bunch with bullets as it was making a turn, and I won. So that's probably what happened to you too. Just naturally, you shot it a bunch, but I just could not. And Silver's trying to do stuff there as well. They're just having a ball. It's not really radical.
They love train yards,
Yeah. That's Radical Train. Next up, another boring level, Tropical Jungle. As Sonic, this is another level where you hold Elise, princess carry her through segments.
Fuck those vines.
Yeah, is trying to jump correctly. Ugh. I love the Rouge level version of this because you can skip it. You just fly past everything. Especially if you know where you're going, just fly straight there. Nothing stops you.
But in hindsight, I was like, I could have done this in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
instead of the
30
10
seconds.
of me searching for the exit.
I was just like, it's probably very far away. So I just kept going straight. Silver's version of this level sucks with the fucking turtles, and you don't even know where you're going. Hate this level. Hate the music for it too. It's
I noticed too, and
bouncy.
Another reason why I think this is Sonic Adventure 3 is because once again there's a jungle level. They just love their jungle levels in Sonic Adventure, and vine mechanics or something to that degree. We don't need them. I don't want them. Stop.
Are you just talking about Sonic in general now? We don't
leave
need them.
the
I don't want them.
vines to Donkey Kong. He has it down. Sonic doesn't need no vines.
It's fair. It's fair. After that, we have Kingdom Valley. Now, I know you perhaps might not like this level. I'm going to go out of my way here, for Sonic at least. This is my favorite Sonic level.
You're crazy.
I'm sorry. I think that it is the most, just aesthetically, the most interesting. I also think that if you were to pull a single level out of this game to have it represent, I wouldn't do Crisis City. I would do Kingdom Valley. I just find it interesting. I don't like where they make you play as Silver. I find it interesting they tutorialize how to play as Silver, even though you could have started playing his story. They still are like, hey, they probably didn't do that, so let's teach them how to play.
It's Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm playing Sonic first.
Exactly. You talked like that. It made me laugh. I find it almost sacrilege that there are sections where like, Dog has his own story. Why is he in here for this segment? Just to have him be at the end of a door and say, I opened this. And then in his version of the level, you show him opening it, I don't know. But I actually liked
Silver's section too was that first part you play as him where you go down the stairs where all the spiky balls are.
Yeah.
I hate it when I'm trying to shoot those and then the spiky ball spawns on top of me and I take damage. I'm like, why would you spawn? Like, how am I supposed to know that, like, it's going to spawn right here? Or why would you let me, I don't know. I just learned to just jump over all of them and just hope that none of them throw their mines at me or whatever, and I'm just gonna
Yeah.
jump to the next ramp. And that freaking ramp too, I always sucked at. If I didn't get it directly,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't press at the right time, I just fall into the water and die. But whatever.
His stuff's a little bit aimless. You don't really know exactly where you're going. The art assets, while I do again thematically like this level's like idea, um, I really had to stop and think, am I just in the same area that the level started in? But no, they just copy paste the same general idea over and over again. That doesn't feel like you're making any progress. Most of these levels are like that, don't get me wrong. I don't really feel like, besides maybe Wave Ocean, where it's water and they're islands, you literally know you were island hopping. It's hard to tell that you really, the distance you went, you know? This one especially, I felt like I was circling the same tower the whole time, and no, you're not. You're going from different pod-like area to another. I hated Silver's segment in here, in his entire level. Shadows was annoying in ways that I didn't anticipate. And this is where they introduced the hovercraft for him, and there's like nothing to do with it. You're just still just driving forward.
You can kill yourself by shooting a building and then letting
Having
it
fall
crush
on
you.
you.
Did that
Yeah,
a couple
yeah.
times. Because I was like, oh, I'm gonna time it perfectly and it's gonna be so cool. No.
No, don't try to be cool in Sonic the Hedgehog 06. That mock section at the end, I'm sorry, I did it first try, and I'm like, thank God this is over.
I want to say, I don't know if it was double digits, but it was close. I lost count. I have a notes on my phone. I'm not gonna go back to them because I don't remember exactly where it is, and it's like at least 12 pages worth of notes, but it just helps me remember things. But I remember writing in there at some point, just being like, "This is gonna kill me." Like this is I've done the thing. I know every true gamer has done this, where if you can't beat a level, you sleep on it, and then the next time you'll beat it. And I'm like, oh, that'll work. Did that like 5 fucking times, bro. And then I just like looked up, not for this level, but there's other levels I would look up tips because it got to the point where I'm like, I can't sit here all day trying to figure this out. Just tell me the answer. But yeah, I just realized on this one, what helped me, where I kept struggling on the mock speed was if I even got this far, because I would run into a wall or I mistimed the 3 jumps at that kind of beginning part there. It was after you do you're jumping off of each pillar. You get to like this where you're there's like a vertical wall, right? And you're running across it. I realized I should just sit in the middle and not go for the rings, because if I went for the rings, you fly off. And I kept dying. And I'm like, why would you punish me for that? But I realized don't go for the rings. And I didn't beat it right away, but that got me to where I needed to go.
Yeah, I liked when you're like running on water on the sides of it. I'm like, that's cool, but I understand that it sucks ass. And also,
I think once again, if all the mock speed levels were taken out of this, I think my beef with this game would be just significantly less. Or some of these levels I would have liked more. It's just having to replay them 12 times, 12 minutes a piece. That starts to add up to my mental state very quickly.
I would not be surprised if the mock speed segments were the inspiration for Sonic Unleash's boost gameplay, where, okay, Sonic's basically running down a lane, and you're just avoiding things left, right, and center for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And that's obviously so much better, and I like that too. I like when they have the 3-lane thing. We'll talk about Sonic Frontiers at a later date, but there's elements of that in that game, and I'm like, yes, finally, yes.
Simple challenges, not complex.
I don't need mock speed. Literally, it's like I feel like it's just as hard as being an actual pilot. That's what it felt like,
Tom Cruise would struggle with Sonic 06 with Kingdom Valley. Tom Cruise would have.
Maverick, what would you do?
Mav. Okay, so Aquatic Base is Sonic's final level, and it's a dud. It's a dud for Silver. It's a dud for Shadow. It's a dud for everyone.
Way too long. Way too not enough checkpoints, because there's some parts where you switch characters and that's like another 3 minutes until you get another checkpoint, and it's too
Yeah.
brutal, especially when you're low lives and you're trying not be as risky. And I feel like you have to be risky at some parts to
Standing on
move
the
on.
giant silver ball thing,
Oh
shoot me
my
in the
god,
face, dude.
it's so sensitive. And I kept well, I think this is part of, I haven't mentioned it on
Uh,
air, but we talked about it, was around this time with the Sonic levels, around Kingdom Valley and around Aquatic Base, I realized I was starting to get some Joy-Con drift with the right stick, which affects the camera. Luckily, it doesn't affect the movement, but it affects
yeah.
the camera. So the camera is slowly turning right, counterclockwise, or clockwise
Yeah.
rather. And I thought it was the game for a while, but then I realized
Because, you know, it's
it,
a fair assessment to me.
yeah, because I felt like it was happening in the game, and it rarely happened in the menu for some reason. I don't know if it was just like the sensitivity is different, like how much input it's requiring to move in the menu. But it eventually started doing it, and I was like, fuck, am I not gonna be able to play this game? But it happened a couple times during Aquatic Base when I'm flying as Tails,
Oh, no.
and I just run into a wall or fall off, or the silver ball, I just all of a sudden fall off of it because I think it's not registering me as being on the ball. I'm trying to like look away from it. So I had to
Oh.
but I learned a trick, and I went up doing this later on. But luckily, the Joy-Con drift did go away until the last chapter, which I had to watch your playthrough because it got to the point where I couldn't get it back. But I did learn that if you with R2 you can move the camera, right? So if I started
Right.
having it, I would start pressing it like a brake or something, and I'm like to like stop it from like being
Interesting.
unbearable, because it was just a slight turn. It wasn't like a harsh turn, but it was still enough to where it will throw you off if you're trying to move in a certain direction. But yeah, I made the game more harder for myself. So I think that didn't help. But that silver ball, that was tough.
Yeah, no, because the gates like destroy it, and I didn't realize that right away. And it waits too longer. Like I could have made that, but like I'm not
Yeah.
going to risk it. You know. But
I
talk
have
about
2 lives
hardware.
left. I
We should
12 minutes
mention.
in.
Yeah, I should mention we played the PlayStation 3 version of this game. Devin played it on a CECHK01 PS3 system, which is the one I mentioned earlier in my story, and I played it on the PlayStation 3 Slim, the 2001A variant. Although I did play it briefly on my CECH A01, my nice launch day backwards compatible edition, which I did have a flash accelerated hard drive in. This game doesn't use your hard drive at all, so I don't get to benefit from the loading times or the loading speed ups, which, you know, this game could have benefited from. So when he said Joy-Con drift, it's one of my DualShock 3s that I sent him along with my PlayStation 3 via UPS.
I mean, I'm happy it lasted
over the mail.
as long as it did, or it went away. Because I feel like I wouldn't have been able to get a good experience with this. I think it's fine with the final chapter. I got through half of the final chapter before I had to just tap out.
And the
'cause it
final
become-
chapter sucks, so. But yes.
I think I could have beat it, but trying to do the silver section, which requires a lot of the camera movement.
Let's
to
just
move
talk about it
around.
right now. End of the World is the final level. It is really just a bunch of other levels with, like I said, purple bloom lighting or orange bloom lighting.
And stupid eyeballs.
Yeah, and stupid eyeballs. It sucks. You play as all the characters but Blaze and Sonic. So 7 characters. They all have a small segment.
No checkpoints.
No checkpoints per each, but thankfully they're not too long. They're pretty short. But figuring out where you're supposed to go, and like the ball eyeballs show up out of nowhere. Also, it's around this point in the game where I am so upset at the random worms that just pop out of the ground. You don't know they're coming. Then they just do, and you lose your rings. And I'm like, fuck this game.
Yeah. And the eyeballs, how they work, like obviously you're trying to walk away from them or fly away from them. Tails can't fly away with them. You just get sucked every time. But you can walk away from them slowly but surely, but you can do it.
Yeah.
But with my
some
Joy-Con
better than
drift-
others.
With my Joy-Con drift with silver, what made it challenging was that it was slowly rotating, and then when the eyeball was pulling, it would just it's a ticking time bomb. Where
Instead
it's
of walking directly away, you're walking at an angle
towards
and
it.
you're technically
all of a sudden you're towards it. Yeah.
Yep.
And as it got worse, it was moving a lot quicker. Like I could do a full rotation probably in a second. Oh no. So it was getting to the point where I'm like, are these eyeballs just OP or is it the Joy-Con? It's the Joy-Con. The eyeballs are tough though, general, because it's a time thing too. I noticed with the tails, because I could avoid any of the eyeballs if you just immediately jump onto that top ramp, jump through that little hoop to boost you, get on top of the water tower thing, jump up on there. I could get there without any eyeballs really showing up. And I realize it's a time thing.
Yeah.
So like with silver, that's why I felt pressured to even move quicker, is because I know if I don't move quick enough, it's gonna be really, really, really tough to like do anything, because he still gets sucked when you're flying or whatnot. It's not, you're not invisible. So
yeah, for sure. And you saw in my
eyeballs that
gameplay,
suck.
I had played silver so many times that I basically perfected up until a point with that. But what this level in quotes has are these random statues that just stop the flow of time. They just pause the eyeballs. They go away and they don't come back for a while. So use that strategically, but it's really just, is it there? Okay, you touch it. So really it's just, you can almost just assume at this segment of the level, nothing happens with the eyeballs, because why wouldn't you touch it? So
I mean, I know why they did with they had both the Iblis and Mephiles like contrast. I get why, but I kind of wish they just stuck with one, like just the eyeballs or just the enemies. Probably the enemies, because they're not as tough. But like some of the platformer was already tough as is, and then when you're you're getting sucked by the eyeballs on silver levels, it's tough.
Besides silver, where it was mandatory to make platforms spawn, I never fought any of them. Like maybe homing attack ones as Shadow, but like I never fought any of these things. You just run past them all, so they're just annoying. And like I loved at the end of Tails' segment, which is the very first one, they have two of the giant purple golems with the thing guarding it. Like, nah, bitch, I'm just gonna run right past you. I'm not gonna fight as Tails with the bomb thing. Are you kidding me? No.
Just get that one up and grab the diamond. You're good.
Yep.
Or emerald.
It's yellow Chaos Emerald. We'll talk about the Chaos Emeralds.
He said diamonds.
We'll talk about the Chaos Emeralds when we get to the story segment, because, oh boy, I don't think this game is canon for that reason alone. But yeah, those are all of the levels. Now we have bosses. We're just going to list them all off. If we have any thoughts about any of them, we'll shout them out. But we have Egg Cerberus, the dog. Egg Genesis, the giant floating circle thing with legs. Egg Wyvern, Sonic's final boss, where he actually fights Eggman. Silver when he fights Sonic. Shadow when Silver fights Shadow. And Silver when Sonic fights him. Silver when Shadow fights him. And then Iblis Phase 1, which was... I don't even remember him at all, but I think Silver fought him at the beginning of the game after Crisis City.
Yeah, he's much more kaiju-like in the first one. Then he's... In the second one, he's the
worm.
Tremors worm thing. And then 3, he's kind of back to like the kaiju, but I think it's different. A little bit different looking from the first one, but yeah.
He's got 3 phases for that, 3 different boss fights. Then we have Mephiles Phase 1, Mephiles Phase 2, and the final boss, Solaris, which all of our hedgehog boys fight together. So I will say Egg Cerberus sucks the most. Egg Wyvern.
So it's too technical about the whole like running him into a wall. You have to like angle it perfectly. It's just time consuming when it didn't have to be.
Yep. Trying to grind on the back of him as Shadow, I just couldn't do half the time. So because what Shadow could do is he would homing attack into something, then hang in the air and bounce up regardless. So I just did that to get to the horde on Egg Cerberus. I didn't really grind the rail. I'm like, fuck it. He doesn't get hurt when you do it, so I'm not losing rings. I'm just going to keep doing it to get up to the forehead. Whatever. Sonic's final boss, Egg Wyvern. I could see this being a fun boss in a different game. Not this one. Not this one at all.
It does the same thing as the Cerberus thing, is that you have to run into... floating like debris or whatever. I think it's falling off the ship, and sometimes it took you
unintuitive.
Too long. Yeah, it's a good idea for sure. Though I did it first try Well,
Oh, good for you.
second try, but because the first try I thought I had a homing attack, and I basically just jumped off the map, and I'm like, oh.
Oh, yeah,
But
I've
then the
killed
second
myself
time I
not
went
knowing.
straight. I went straight because I was like, once I'm like, oh, I have to just.
Yeah, and you know,
Because I wasn't sure
it's
because he kept doing the same thing, but then I realized it was when he was charging in. I'm like, okay, I got you. And
yeah,
after
yeah,
that, I was like, okay, second try. There you go.
yeah, and it's neat that the platform you're standing on gets slowly smaller and smaller. Forget the fact that it's not connected to anything, so you shouldn't be able to stand on it. I don't care. I think the whole thing is also falling out of the sky, so maybe it's falling at the same rate. Who gives a shit? Um, I will say it's a meme. The silver boss fight as Sonic is a meme because he can soft lock your game by throwing you into a wall. You lose your rings. You fall down with just enough time to pick up a ring, but he already picked you back up, throws you into the wall, and you just loop that forever.
Take this.
It's no
Take
use.
this.
It's no use. Over and over
Oh
again.
my god, so annoying.
Fuck. I will say this though: when you fight Silver as Shadow, it's the coolest fucking thing in this game, and I laughed when I saw it because I'm like, yeah, this is cool. When Shadow kicks Silver in the back of the head, I'm like, yeah, this is neat. I got to watch it twice.
And I struggled with Shadow too, fighting Silver, just because of the same shit where you just get caught in a corner.
Yep.
And you're trying to like bait him to like grab objects so you can attack him.
Right.
But it's tough. Whatever.
And like you're running away from him, but he's not. In order to do so, he can't be on your camera. So you're just hoping that he's far. And when you turn to look, he's far away enough that you can decide if you need to keep moving or not. Fighting Sonic as Silver is hilarious because you pick up all the chairs and just spam them and Sonic dies. I thought that was actually hilarious.
Yeah.
I wanted to loop Sonic, like, you know.
Yeah, I wanted to do what they did against me, but
Yeah.
close enough.
Yeah.
But
Just imagine that, like Sonic's, I'm gonna fight you, and this dude just throws chairs at you. It's so
and at this
stupid.
point too, I thought there was gonna be an alternate timeline kind of thing where like Sonic dies there or something like that. But that didn't happen, obviously.
Yeah.
Sonic does die though.
He does. As many fun facts will tell you, Mephiles is the only villain to successfully kill Sonic.
Mm-hmm. And he did the Sephiroth thing too.
Yeah. Oh my god! I wonder if that influenced.
Honestly,
them.
it was. I also I feel like it's just kind of because I've seen it in anime too though. Like I've seen that kind of thing where the main character gets stabbed like unexpectedly and like it's fatal.
Well, hey,
you know,
maybe
it's been in Final Fantasy VII. It's been in this.
Maybe it's like the Akira bike
in
slide
Evangelion
where
or
everyone
something.
does it.
Yeah. It's funny though.
Yeah. So then we have, I don't remember Iblis Phase 1 at all, but Phase 2 is the worm thing. It's so dumb.
Phase
Lure
1
the
of
worm
Iblis
in.
is basically like Phase 3. You're just chucking a bunch of meteors at him, but it's a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember.
And I liked it. I liked it as like a
Phase 1 at all.
starting kind of thing. I'm like, that's cool. Like I like the idea of it. But then Phase 3 was I had to look Google or YouTube rather.
Yeah, you had to tell me. Because I'm like, you just run out of land to stand on.
I thought I thought for the longest time too. I thought it was like because they do spawn you a bunch of meteors, and I realized if you don't throw them all at the same time, you might get more the second round for some reason. Because if he does the big meteor the second time, you're dead regardless.
Yeah.
But we found out that you have to catch the big meteor.
No
but
idea.
You gotta
And
do
it
it
makes
in a
sense. I get it. I just didn't think I would be able to.
I tried it like just naturally and I didn't do it, but then I watched a video and they're like, oh, they just held it down longer than I did because I tried to like grab it. You know what I mean? Like I don't think of it as a force field too much, you know, but that's what it is. So
Yeah.
it's a mechanics thing, but
It didn't.
yeah,
care
once you
for
do
him.
that, it's easy.
Yeah. Next, we have the two Mephiles boss fights. I enjoyed them. I actually enjoyed them. I thought it was a cool puzzle. Like you can't just attack them directly in the first one. You have to build up Shadow. You have to build up Shadow's gauge, then to activate his red aura. Then you can hurt him. I liked that. And the second one as well. You had to build up your gauge. I actually literally enjoyed it. Put it in a better game though. And then we have the final boss fight, which is just like a lot of games do sometimes. Here's brand new mechanics. Yeah, good luck, have fun. You know,
This reminded me of Devil May Cry's final boss fight.
for the
Where
first
he's
game.
flying where he's flying through the air and like you're just shooting like beams and shit at him. But it's so much cooler.
And
Devil
definitely
May Cry.
this one's boring. Uh, as you saw in the video, I had no idea what I was doing. I then at one point realized Silver can at least hurt him sometimes with the meteors, so I did that, and then I realized you had to hold down R1 for Sonic and Shadow to have their attacks work. They're
Mm.
super, and like what I will say is this: they're all Super Sonic, Super Shadow, Super Silver, and you can't die unless you run out of rings. And when you're about to run out of rings, they actually tell you, "Hey, swap to someone else." So you press triangle to swap to the other person. Meanwhile, on the bench there, Sonic's rings are maxed out again, so you can stay alive if you're just paying attention to your rings, and you can figure it out because the game doesn't want to tell you. I died, and then all of a sudden I was getting hints. I'm like, oh, but yeah, Solaris is a boring boss fight. You have to do him twice for whatever reason. Second time he's faster. It's dumb. But yeah, those are all the bosses. Now let's talk about the hub area, Soliana. It's got 3 of them. There's the castle town, then there's like the downtown area called New City, and then there is an empty fucking forest area.
The most empty, like, I don't want to say open world, but just the most empty thing I've ever seen in a video game. Honestly, it's kind of reminds me of like, you know, some games that I've played on Steam. You know what I mean, that were made by one guy with a bunch of like Unreal assets, right? Like this is Hunt Down the Freeman levels of just open world. Like we have this section and there's nothing but some like 4 characters that you could talk to,
and it's really big, and you know they spawn in when they're 3 meters in front of you, so you don't actually see them until you get close. Yeah, that forest was clearly unfinished.
They should have just left it as like either just sections you can only get to when the plot gets to it.
Yeah.
Instead of having like you going to here, talk to this person, then you basically have to explore until you find where you're supposed to go. That was another issue I had with any of these hub areas, is I never knew really where to go. I didn't realize till later that like it does tell you like what section on like the little mini map thing that they show in the loading screen where you're supposed to go. Generally,
you can't access that map when you're playing. I mean, thank God the minutes are the 3-minute load times exist, but one of the hints that use the map and radar to help you. The radar's too zoomed in. It's one of those things where it's like, I swear I swear like it's 4 feet of radar or something like that, and you can't access the map at all when you play. So yeah, I just circled the perimeter of every environment till I found where I was supposed to go. I still to this day have no idea what the Castle Town segment layout is besides circling the perimeter till I find where I'm supposed to go. Do you know at one point they were supposed to have you grind like the railings and stuff on these segments in these hub areas, but the collision kept breaking up and Sonic would just hurl into the sea because you hit an angle weird. You know?
I mean, I think it's funny that some of the side characters, when they do follow you, are always falling in. Yeah. Like, I heard Amy like scream like 20 times. You know, just dude. Which if we ever do any YouTube stuff like we've talked about, hint hint. I still say that it's gotta be alerts. Is either the guy going like, "Hey," when you talk to them, any person, or like Amy screaming every time she fell in the water. That shit drove me nuts.
Shadow screaming when he falls is funny too. But Blaze does that in the final boss fight for Silver. When you get to the second part, she will fall. And he says, all right, Blaze, let's do it. And she's gone, dude. She fell to her death.
She dead.
Yeah. These segments are
it.
bland and ugly. Pre-release footage for the game and trailers shows a much more vibrant color palette, more dense characters, different buildings, more textures. This place sucks. This is definitely an early Xbox 360 open world idea. This is like a prototype of what a Ubisoft Assassin's Creed Venice would have looked like, or whatever.
Someone should mod in Castletown or any of these hub spots into like Assassin's Creed. Just like just somehow move that map. I would love that. That'd be hilarious to me.
I think it's very clear that Soliana as a city is based off Venice in real life. They literally call it the city on the water. And I will say this. I like the Castletown's aesthetics. Just put it in a Final Fantasy game or something else. Don't put it in Sonic. Like, you didn't nail it for this at all.
I think a good example of what, like, in terms of, I want to say quality, but just like a lower budget kind of big city idea is like Nier Automata or Replicant, where they have those little hubs, right?
Yeah.
And there's really not, like, you're just talking to people and moving on to the next thing. There's not too much you can actually interact with once you get through it.
But I think that's a good example of
what a low budget kind of open hub area can
a safe
like.
Zone between the action gameplay where you chill, a chill space. Yeah, Soliana sucks. Okay, yeah, and the new city is confusing. There's a lot of footage I have because I probably like turned the TV off and went away at one point in my footage, but the TV that you can buy stuff from, the shop TV, you can stand on it at an angle. And it's just funny to me that, like, because of the pathing on what characters can stand on and how they don't have like gravity or physics affect them, they just stay there. You can stand on the back of this thing and you can spin dash at a weird angle. I don't know. I thought it was dumb, but
you don't need the shop. They should just gave you all the abilities up front.
They just wanted you to unlock things. They felt like they needed you to unlock things. That's it.
Because you get all these rings and it doesn't fucking matter.
Nope. What are you going to spend them on?
Side quests don't matter in any of these spots. I think we should quickly point out that we did do, at least in Castletown, I did do, and a couple in New City, I did do some of the side quests. But early on when I did these, I did like a good like 25 minutes worth of some of them. And then went to another level, forgot to save, died.
And wiped them all clean.
So I was like, fuck that. I stopped doing them after that. So.
I did, same with B. And then from that point on, I did a couple in Sonic. Then I did a couple as Silver and a couple as Shadow. Because I just wanted to see. Silver had one early on where you're in the forest and this dude's like, hey man, it's apple picking season, even though these trees are not apple trees and they're gigantic. I wish I could have had some help here getting all these apples into the barrel. You want to help me? And so what you do, now Silver picks up giant boxes that are bigger than him and things that are bigger than him. Like, to scale, normal sized apples are just on the ground in giant bundles. And there's just a stack of barrels in a corner. And you pick up a whole bunch of these individual apples using your psychonesis, waddle over the barrels, try to have them be over the barrels, and then don't throw, just let go, and just some fall in there and they despawn. So you just press it again to pick up the ones you missed and try again over and over. I got so many apples in there, and it's a time limit. This one's just until the time runs out, get how many apples. I got so many apples. Dude gave me an E. I got an E. What the fuck? Got an E. Shadow had one where this dude's like, here's a 7-digit number. Hit the boxes corresponding to each digit. And you're supposed to just remember the number 237892. And I'm like, okay, I did it the first time. And the guy's like, all right, here's this number. Or did I say this number? And I'm like, no, it's the first one. I do it and it's wrong. And I'm like, no, okay, I'm not doing this now. I skipped that one. So, but like, Not only are they
Uh,
finicky, not only are they stupid, not only are they bad. Um, there's one as Sonic later on where you race a human man dressed as Sonic who claims that he's the real Sonic,
oh,
and
damn! I,
he's
I missed that
really
one.
he kind of looks like Pepsi Man. If you've ever
Oh,
seen
the
Pepsi Man,
game, yeah, the video
he kind
game.
of looks like Pepsi Man. It's really dumb. But at that point, I had purchased Sonic's Mach Speed thing, and you run through the New City section when you race him, and there are plenty of straightaways. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just hammering the. I smoked this fucker's ass, and afterwards he's like, "Can I get your autograph?" What's
That's
annoying?
that is kind of funny though.
That was funny, and I kind of wish maybe I did more of them, but I don't because you accept one, and they tell you what you that they want you to do. Then 2 minutes of loading pops by. You're just there again. They tell you verbatim what they want you to do. Then 2 more minutes load, and you're in the same area in all three of these instances, but they reload the entire environment again. Entirely. And then this game just starts when it's done loading. It doesn't say press X to continue. Because, dude, I put the controller down and looked away several times. And like,
Yeah,
oh shit,
same.
I had to pick it up and start. And for a lot of these, including the race against this dude, because the first time I did it, I fell into water and died, of course. Um, they don't say, "Do you want to try again?" They take you
You just
back. They make you
you go
load
through.
back into the city again,
Yep.
where he says, "Haha, you suck," and then you do it. Like that's like 6 loading times just to actually succeed in some of these. So they suck, and I don't recommend it. Um, in order to get to the first level as Sonic in the Castle Town, you have to get a job and buy an item, buy the ring dash thing. The job you get from the first side quest is run through all these red rings that apparently these people do. There was one as Silver in the forest area that this castle guard is like, this is the trading ground for the knights of the Soliana or whatever. We go through this course, this obstacle course. Motherfucker, y'all ain't flying. You had me fly through rings in the air.
I mean,
Y'all
have you
ain't
seen
doing
them not
this.
fly? I mean, come on.
I
Maybe
haven't.
they do.
I
Fly.
haven't seen them walk. They stand still.
Do they exist actually?
Yeah.
We have a whole army, but we only see it in the cutscenes.
There's one where they tried to do like a riddle where like 2 of the guards are lying,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, is it you? Shit. Like, yeah, dog. It's not a puzzle. I just listen to everyone. Like, the only one that would be lying is you, because you say that there's another one lying. It's just you. Okay.
I would always guess the original too. Like, I
If
feel
it's
like
an
that's the whole
option.
point with a riddle. Like, it's always sometimes the obvious thing because that's
Yeah.
the point. So,
So yeah, there's a lot of these. Sometimes they force them on you, like save the kid off the top of the roof.
he literally stops the suicide. That's crazy.
Yeah. Then there's sneak into the train station. Ugh.
I couldn't get that to trigger because I didn't realize I had to go buy something that
Yep.
didn't matter
Yep.
to that particular thing. You know,
The thing that they make you buy is Silver's warp. It's not a teleport. He just moves forward quickly. That's it.
mm-hmm.
It's not a teleport. I never used that shit, but they needed you to use it, apparently. At one point during that, I just saw there was an opening and I just booked it, and I made him like, fuck this, I'm done. Never again. So,
There was one side quest I couldn't do where it was it was Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles,
oh, yeah.
and it was like you have 2 minutes to clear these rings, and like it's so finicky that you're not gonna.
I did that
You gotta do it a
one,
couple of
but-
times, and my patience is very thin.
Yep.
When you fail, you have to go through the cutscenes again. I'm like, nah, fuck that.
Both Sonic and Silver have the 3 trials they need to do in the forest area in order to access Kingdom Valley. Shadow just finds a teleport and gets in. But those trials suck a lot. The third Sonic one is hilarious. I remember this differently as a kid. As a kid, what I remember is you get to it and the dude's like, you need to choose your one true love. And there is just a facsimile of Amy standing there, and then the same for Elise. But they're in different segments. You have to warp to them. And, oh, do you love her? Like, yeah. All right. What I remember as a kid was me being like, oh, I'm going to pick Amy because she's always in all these games. And she's the
OG.
same. And I understand maybe in a 2022 context, this might seem weird, but like, she's the same species as Sonic. so it makes sense. And I remember the game saying that I lost, and nope, you didn't have in your heart correctly. That's what I remember. But in here, for footage, I'm like, I want to get the Amy one first. And then it let me win. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I remember.
Yeah, I did
wrong.
Amy as well, so I have no idea what the.
So whatever.
Because Amy's the real one. She's been there since day one.
Day 2. But yeah.
Whatever. But no, you know what I mean. That she's always been the one. Sonic just met a new girl at a different school, kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Elise was.
You wouldn't know her. She goes to a different school, different kingdom.
Elise was like 4 when Amy first met Sonic. All right, so like, let's get out of here, kid. Yeah. And Silver's was annoying. Silver had one where it was like word association. I'm like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. But whatever, you memorize the answers, and so you brute force your way through it. So those are like the side quest stuff that we did. Maybe you get something if you do them all. I don't care. Let's talk about the story now. So, in the order I played them, I did Sonic's, then Silver's, then Shadow's.
I did Sonic, Shadow, Silver.
Okay.
I went in chronological, I guess, because I think that's how it is in the menu, so I just did Sonic, Shadows. But to be fair, I didn't finish Shadows completely when I started Silver. When I kind of got stuck on Shadow to make myself feel more productive, I was like, okay, I'll go do Silver's first level or something like that.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
The story overall is trying to be cool in the sense that it's trying to have, these 3 parallel stories, or especially with the Sonic, or especially with the Silver and Shadow stuff. Like, you don't know thing about A when you do Silver's, and then you knew it when you do Shadows, or vice versa. Like, I get it, and it's kind of cool. Sonic's is like siloed completely. He's just trying to get Elise. And I swear, this kid, I'm going to call her a kid, she gets kidnapped like 6 times by Eggman just for the sake of the story needs Sonic to not have her around and for him to do something. And it's so annoying. I'm like, he finally saves her. There's a segment in Silver's story where Amy goes to like the bathroom but finds Elise there, and then she leaves with Elise. And then they talk about boys, and then she gets captured right as Sonic shows up. So, whatever. I will say this, though, and I'm curious to know your opinions. Sonic's was whatever. Silver's was dumb. Shadow's was actually not bad. I will say this. Shadow and Rouge have agency in their story. They make decisions and act on those decisions. Yes, they do report to the government, and there is, like, they are working for them, and, hey, just sit rep type stuff, but, like, they are in control of what they're doing. Sonic's constantly chasing Eggman. Silver's constantly trying to figure out what the fuck he's doing, but he chases something that randomly pops up in front of him. Shadow and Rouge actually decide to do things, and Mephiles being Silver's, like, villain for his story isn't bad. I actually kind of enjoyed it. What about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I said before that I think Shadow should have been the first thing you played, just because, one, I think all his levels combined, gameplay throughout, is just a lot better than both Sonic and Silver. But also I found, the story a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's like groundbreaking,
Sure.
Granted, we're living in an age when games like Last of Us, God of War, more heavy story-driven games are made, but I get for the time and whatnot, I think this is not a bad idea, and I do like the idea of him being a kind of Leon Kennedy of the government a bit. And I'm a sucker for Rouge, so I'm gonna be biased there. But no. I agree with you. I really liked that they make it seem like they didn't have to help, but they do because they choose good intention. They have good intentions. I like that Rouge is kind of a like Black Cat to kind of compare it to like Spider-Man. where she's collecting all
She's a
these.
thief.
She's a thief, but she's a good thief, I guess you can say. But
Hey
yeah, and I like how they
guys.
and I like
She
how
does
they
that
make
a
fun
lot.
of Knuckles at that one part.
Yep.
And honestly, it's my playthrough since I did Shadow then Silver, the way Shadows ended, I thought, because I knew you said that Shadow the Hedgehog came out around this time. I'm like, oh, do they end it here to kind of tie it in with Shadow the Hedgehog's
Oh,
game? I'm
interesting.
like, that's cool. I even wrote a note, and then like once you get to the final episode, I'm like, oh fuck. I thought it
I
would be like a tie-in to the Shadow game, and I'm like, yeah. So
I not gonna lie, like I said. So here's one thing actually I'll say about the story overall before I get back into it. The animation on these characters, I'm not saying this for a fact. I'm pretty sure it's mocapped, but like it's just body movements, and then they did the hands themselves and they did the mouths themselves and the eyes and all that. But I get the feeling that they had mocapped this, and when I say that is because what I see in the animation on these characters in these cutscenes reminds me a lot of other mid 2000s like PS2 and early PS3 era Japanese games where there was mocapping, and I'm not talking about Metal Gear. Dirge of Cerberus, the Final Fantasy VII shooting spin-off starring the vampire dude, Vincent, is a bad game. It features what I see in its cutscenes here, where the characters are mocapped in cutscenes, but they're not keyframing anything. They're not hand animating any of their body movements. They're not holding poses very well. And in a scene, let's say you and I are in a scene together. I'm prostrating or whatever in front of you, not prostrating,
you're
prostrating in
prostating,
front of
yes.
you as I'm talking, and I hold the pose as the camera shifts to focus on you, but I'm still in frame. And they're still mocapping me as I stand as still as possible, but you could still see me jitter around because I'm still being filmed. They're not holding a pose on me. That game did it a lot, and I see it in this one as well, where I'm like,
I did notice in some of the cutscenes, people like there's some goofy like animations and whatnot in
they're
the
animated like
cutscenes,
they're
but
people and not someone whose head is bigger than their torso. When Shadow and any of these other characters cross their arms, their fingertips wrap around their entire body. You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense for how they're designed as characters. So who knows? This is
it's
probably
very
cheaper and faster,
it
but they
all
should not have animated it
it's
that
kind of
way.
like the VTubers, in
Yes,
a way.
it's like that. Or when you see any of these amateurish fan animation stuff, where they'll do like, not knocking on anyone, but they'll just take art assets from a game that they have files for, like Sonic even, and they'll just puppet around the characters. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like, but as if like they mocapped that instead. Like it has
Yeah.
that fakeness to it where y'all are in a giant costume of this character.
There's one part near the end of the worlds, I think in the last couple cutscenes, like there's a reaction by Knuckles that made me laugh because he was like, oh, oh. He kind of like looked to him, like just over the top, like just Cartoon Network kind of like bug-eyed, like holy shit, like kind of looked to him. That just made me laugh. So the animations are funny, but I do say, but there's also a difference between them, and I feel like than like the opening and ending cutscenes,
Which are done by
which
Blur
actually,
Studios.
which shout out to I think we've mentioned in the past, but if people don't know, maybe this is their first episode. We obviously cover the Sonic movie, hence our name.
Yes.
That Jeff Fowler did work at these studios, and I think that's how it helped him get the job
Yeah.
for the Sonic movie, and he had experience of why I think they executed it well after the design change. But you know what I mean, like he had experience with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Blur did Shadow the Hedgehog's CG stuff, and they did Sonic's opening and ending. I think there's because I saw it twice because it's in Shadows and Silvers. The part where they're in aquatic base in the past, that cutscene, and there's a couple Sonic ones as well where it's not fully CG. It's the character models because you can see polygon edges, but maybe slightly higher up, and they're taking a lot more care on how they handle the scenes. And in those scenes, like Sonic, Shadow, and Silver move very jankily. They don't. No. Oh man, that was clearly a hey. Blur's work is done, and we still need more cutscenes now because our story keeps changing. Let's just try ourselves because the quality is all over the place. Apparently, Blur had stated that in the opening of the game with Sonic in like the festival, the position they were told to have Sonic made his mouth like literally on the side of his face when he was talking, and it was weird. It's like that's an issue that they had, but yeah, I mean like Elisa's animation as the fires are going out around her is great. You know, no notes there because I don't really give a shit. You know, and I think it's good enough. You know, the ending cutscene ish where she kisses Sonic. And then they all have the Chaos Emeralds, and then they turn into super versions, and they fly up, and we get like the different camera angles of everyone cheering them on, and they look very weird because it's like I said, the in-engine, but then also effects done to them in a CG type of format. It was very weird. So
yeah,
oof. But I wanted to say about like how they animate and stuff. For the most part, I actually felt Shadow weirdly animated okay. Whoever was mocapping Shadow and a lot of his story stuff, his movements felt okay enough. And like I said, I love when he kicks Silver in the back of the head. I just liked it for whatever reason. And at the end of his story, when he takes off his weird bracelets and that somehow makes him more strong, I'm like, all right, this guy's cool.
He's taking the gloves off. He's not kidding around no
He's
more.
not kidding
That's kind of how I interpreted it.
But yeah, that's the anything about the story. I mean, the characters are all bland and boring.
I mean, the idea of them kind of going back in time and stuff I thought was interesting. And I did like the whole like Doomsday world when you first see it through Sonic's story. I just thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, I could tell that their parts were cut. There were some things that just like with the Amy and Princess Elise thing, for like going back to that example of just talked about and then just never mentioned again.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was there and got cut. I don't know, but
why is Knuckles here?
Why is Knuckles
at least
here?
at least Omega has a story purpose. You know what I mean? But
yeah, there's just some loose ends, but whatever. I'm also not that picky because it's a Sonic game. I don't play Sonic for the plot.
Exactly. I will point this out, though. The Chaos Emeralds break continuity because they're plucking them out of the past and the future. Well, first off, what I hate is that, you know, Silver and Blaze, they're from Sonic's future, but to them it's their present. Yet they constantly refer to it as the future. You're from that time. It's not the future. It's your current time. You are in the past, you know. But, yeah, they take Chaos Emeralds from the future back into the past, and then I found a graph pointing this out to really illustrate it. The blue Chaos Emerald is something Elisa's been holding on to all her life, and Eggman wants it, and her obviously to unlock the Flames of Disaster. Because if she cries, Iblis is unleashed.
Goofy.
It's so dumb. Her dad sucks. But she has the blue Chaos Emerald. Sonic uses it as a bargaining chip. Silver eventually gets his hands on it, goes in the past, and gives it to 7-year-old Elise. And then 10 years later, like the events of this game happen. So it's constantly in this time loop. So therefore, it never existed before the time loop or afterwards. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's constantly stuck in that loop. Which means if you want to be that guy, it never existed in any other Sonic game. Whatever, I don't care. But I just find it very funny that their version of time travel and stuff is both fate, because Mephiles exists because Shadow went back in time. You know, and Silver, and they went back in time. But also that these characters act outside fate and end the loop. If that makes sense.
Yeah. But all their, and then at the end of the day, though, everything they do doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because they stopped fate. So nothing happens. Which I'm not against. There's been so much time travel, movies, video games, pop fiction, whatever you want to call it. And there's been time, as long as there's been the concept of time, the idea of time travel's been, there.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything, if they broke new ground in any way with the idea of time travel. And with time travel stories, it makes it really hard to fix those kind of loops that you're talking about or plot holes. But when I get into time travel stuff, I immediately be like, it's not going to make sense.
Yep.
It's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's whatever.
Marvel did it.
I just find it funny.
And
Back to the Future is always the classic example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just find it so funny. And I will say this, I did find it eerily neat that, all this trouble, this world-ending, villain and all that stuff, the end of the day was just a little flame on a candle that they blow out and he literally is gone. Like, that's crazy. And then for whatever that means, that because Sonic and Elise were outside time and space when that happened, that they'll never see each other again. And then the opening of the game begins again, but there's no conflict at all. I would like to point out
that he never got that kiss, that smooch.
He never, for the
or
best.
He did.
Yeah.
Or he did get that smooch. He just doesn't remember.
Yeah. Eggman.
He didn't cheat on Amy.
Eggman does nothing besides try to get Iblis, and then he just doesn't want to anymore. Whatever.
Yeah, he pulled kind of at the end there. It's happened in other stuff. I just can't point to one in particular where the main villain is now the good guy or has feelings about the superhero. You know what I mean?
Or he just they have to work together to stop the ultra bad guy thing.
Yeah, which is fine. I didn't like Eggman's design, by the way. Like, he just looked
God,
bad.
no. God, no.
He's not. They make him both like. He's like a potato.
It's a gross old man.
Because he the way he's, to me, I think of him as like an actual orb, right? He's not really an egg, but an orb, right? And I think they went too egg-like or potato-like, rather. Like I said,
yeah.
And they just there's some I don't know, just he looks like he's clipping through himself almost the way he's designed.
Yeah.
And I am on team. Don't show Eggman's eyes. They show his eyes. I made a note of that. I think at the top of the show with my quote because I mentioned it. I don't like when Eggman has eyes, except in the live action movie.
Sure.
But you know what I mean? Like in a cartoon Eggman, I like that he just has the glasses. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't need to see behind him.
I'm a team. Don't show Eggman's legs. I like when he just sits in the pod because when he stands up,
I like when he has the skinny legs though.
Oh, I hate that.
I find that like the Mickey Mouse kind of thing where he's a ball with skinny arms and legs. I think that's fun. I'm okay with legs.
Just no eyes.
Use that quote. Use that quote however you want.
I'm okay with legs, just no eyes. Yeah, he's gross. They made it so that he doesn't stand out too weirdly and out of place next to realistic humans. I get it. On the subject of the matter, Sonic's weirdly long rubbery quills are gross.
I don't like any of the long. I'm not another short quill. Sonic opinion. I'm on short quill. Yeah, I'm on
team
short
quill.
for all hedgehogs.
Yeah, all hedgehogs.
When Silver, they look tentacly, especially Silver's when he goes supersonic. It's like he has octopus tentacles back there.
Gross. Shave.
Yeah, is that how it works? Because it's supposed to be quills, right? But in a video game,
they're just bundled.
I always think of them as actual
part of the head,
like the one Star Wars species there, who have the long tentacle for hair, but they're not hair because it looks like it's physically it's a piece of it's flesh and bone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the orange girl lightsaber Jedi from the cartoon was one of those, right?
Or Jabba the Hutt has a slave one or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're
whatever that species is called. That's what I think of when I see Silver and Sonic in these.
Tweet at us at Sonic Movie Show what that species is called, and please don't use the correct name. I want to know what you think it's called.
It's the Tauntauns. Yeah, sure.
It's a Darth Vader. Yeah. So story is whatever, and I'm glad it ended as if it never happened because they don't need to reference it. Sonic Forces at one point.
They saved themselves at that point.
Yeah,
luckily.
Yeah, they really did. They have an excuse. Sonic Forces at one point was going to have Mephiles be one of the villains that pops back up. The idea was that Eggman during Sonic 06 somehow copied Mephiles somehow and had like computer copies of him or something like that. I'm just glad he's gone.
He had him on a flash drive.
Yeah, the eternal darkness.
He had him on a floppy disk. He was like, I thought I lost this. Had it sitting in storage for a while.
That's the same. The Mephiles puts Eggman in the floppy, and that's our Resident Evil Grand Prix Sonic game. Remember, he's trapped in the computer.
There's the callback.
That was like episode like 40 or something like that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites though. I loved that idea of Eggman being actually like on a disc.
Yeah.
He's like
Sonic
an AI
has to save
almost.
him.
Yeah.
All right, let's move away from the story and kind of wrap up here with just some random bits and bobs of the game. There's a multiplayer mode. I played a brief bit of it because I had 2 controllers. You only had 1. I should have known. I wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't have because I own like 9 PS3 controllers across my 3 different systems.
You have a bucket of them sitting back there somewhere.
And I also have the Batman Arkham City Batarang one, which sucks. So...
It does not work like a Batarang. You've tried it.
It's just gross, legit, just disgusting. But yeah, it has multiplayer mode. There's 2 modes for it. There is essentially, it is split screen race through the level. In one of them, you're working together, which means there's no friendly fire, and you win if you get to the end. And the other one is you hurt each other. I sent you a clip before we started recording of. I'm like, okay, how do they balance Sonic versus Silver or Shadow versus Silver? They don't. But Silver can pick them up and throw them, and just collision breaks, and you can just throw them through walls, I guess. I threw Sonic through a corner, and he in Wave Ocean, and he flew into the sea and under the sea and died.
He got sent to one of the 9 realms.
Yeah, exactly. But then I'm like, okay, I really want to know, how do they balance this? Here's the cheap bullshit. You play as Silver. Want to know why? You pick the other person up, and you just don't throw them. And they're stuck there until you do something about it. So just run through the level. Just run past. As long as you don't need to use your telekinesis, then you're good, because the other player's
even if you
stuck there.
You got a head start.
Yeah.
You can have like a 30-second head start probably.
So yeah, Sonic's faster than you. So at the very beginning, you pick him up immediately, and then you run past him. And then when you need to fight something, you try your best to do it. And when Sonic catches up, pick him up again. Just keep running. Silver is the way to go. It's so dumb. It was such an afterthought. It was like, I will say I was surprised the frame rate didn't die, because you have potentially 2 viewports at once. It was as consistent as the regular single player mode is. So there's that. There's also these silver and gold medals around. I kind of went for them just because I'm like, if I never went out of my way,
they didn't seem hard.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go for them. But if they're on my way, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like, I definitely went for them, but like, I didn't make it an effort to get them all. Thank God this game doesn't have trophies. Thank Christ this game doesn't have trophies. And yeah, there's gold medals. I'm going to admit, I don't know what happens when you get them all. I don't think anything, because that's what this game is. So there's that.
That's honest. That's the story. That's the whole point of the game is after you beat it, nothing happens.
And you can replay levels in the trial menu. There's hard versions.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
There's hard versions of a game that's already wow.
That's bullshit. Yeah. And then you can listen to the music and you can watch the cutscenes again if that's your jam. I do find it funny that the credits play for any of these stories, and they play all the cutscenes for that story. That's funny. It's just funny to me.
Well, they have a song though. They always have a song for each character.
Yep. Zebrahead did the rap rock song for Sonic. Crush 40, who's the classic Sonic Adventure and Onwards band, did Shadows, and then some dudes did Silvers. So that's
the Beatles actually were supposed to be on it, but they broke up.
Ringo played drums for Crush 40. So yeah, that's the entirety of the game. We need some final thoughts on this. You go first.
Final thoughts. This is a game that took me back to a time where, like kind of you mentioned, where probably what the age we would have been, like you said, he didn't know if this was bad. But it took me back to that time of when I played games similar to this, but so much better, and maybe from smaller developers and whatnot. And it just it makes me question a lot of like we know kind of what went wrong, but it just makes me question like how this game affected talking about time travel, how this game affected to where we are now with like games like Sonic Frontiers coming out. In a weird way, I'm kind of glad we played this. How many years later?
Yeah.
On around the same time Sonic Frontiers came out, which I think is I don't want to say it's the same level of like expectations in the sense of this is a reboot, but it's the same kind of vibe where I'm like, this is a new thing. They're trying something new. Start of a new era potentially for Sonic the Hedgehog, especially after a dud like Sonic Forces. Not saying it's comparable directly, but I just feel like there's like that comparison I'm just naturally
For
making.
sure.
I think that I'm just like, wow. And it's making me maybe have a different perspective on, like I said earlier, about Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, about maybe even the earlier games. And it's just crazy to see the rock bottom, I guess.
Yeah.
And I hope we never see this again. And as much as we didn't like Sonic Forces, but I'm like, wow, they've come a long way, I guess. In a way, I guess I'm kind of like a mixed bag of they've come a long way. But what would have happened if this game was just remotely better? Would they have continued making games like this? Would we ever have gotten games like Sonic Colors, Sonic Forces, and then now Sonic Frontiers? Would that have ever happened? I don't know. You know, like if this game was never came to, what if it was just a PS3 exclusive or PlayStation exclusive, for example? What if they went that route? What if it did come out on Wii, like we mentioned? You know, there's so many things that could have happened. And it's just interesting how it kind of led to this point. Because I think there is a ripple effect. Like you mentioned how Sega is haunted by this game.
For sure.
So for me, it's like a game that it kind of took me back in time. But also I get it now. I feel like I've always kind of got it. But like playing it and sitting through it, I get why Sonic has been a meme. I get like why Sonic is an underdog at this point. I think he's gone the up and up after the movies, and Sonic Frontiers seems so far, knock on wood, to be decently received compared to some of his predecessors. But man, this could have killed Sonic. It almost did. It feels like.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out, I guess, the way it did in a weird way, but yeah, I don't know. This game's bad. I don't like this game. I don't want to ever play it again. Don't want to play no remake. Even if they remastered it, that'd be a tough sell for me.
I would be interested. Overhaul. Obviously, I would be morbidly
have to be complete
interested.
Overhaul.
But yeah,
just overall, I'm like reflecting, and after having this conversation, it's just like, damn, this existed at a time when a lot of other good games were coming out and feels like miles ahead.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm kind of like I said, I'm kind of glad this happened in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe they needed to hit rock bottom to be like, fuck, we need to change the recipe. And I didn't say they figured it out by any means, but I don't think we would be where we're at now without them failing. This time, this is the ultimate fail. Then there's other times they failed. But I think in a way, I'm kind of glad there isn't a Sonic Adventure 3 and 4 or whatever. And I think it's because of this game. And maybe in a way that's a godsend because maybe they needed to learn their lesson.
I would say this was meant to be a reboot, but this game was the reason for them to reboot the Sonic idea. Because of this game, they said we need to redo stuff. Yeah, I mean, this was, like I mentioned before, Jesus, like an hour and a half ago, no, even earlier than that. Making games on these systems was a challenge, especially the PS3. Making games, at all. So they needed to learn, and this was a huge learning point where they literally had to make an engine. They needed to rework. Okay, Sonic cannot just exist in open spaces. We needed to tighten up his gameplay. It was the dumb thing people say, like, what does that even mean? But, really focus his gameplay down. He goes forward, and you do tight mini actions to try to do the level faster. If you know the level, you can do it faster. And the idea is just knowing what's coming up ahead. That's what people always did with old Sonic games. That's what Unleashed is going to do, right? But then we get other issues with needing to make sure that we're not blowing our budget on 3 levels, so you need to expand it all. I get it. But this game also, like I mentioned before, is the last time we had our 3 parallel stories in general. Also, last time we had multiple playable characters. Like Sonic Forces had, and Sonic Generations had the 2 classic and modern. Forces added in your avatar, you know. But besides that, you ain't playing as Tails and Knuckles and Rouge and Omega and Blaze and Silver. You know what I mean? Like, a handheld game here might have Blaze in it. Okay, cool. But we're not getting that. We need to develop 9 different gameplay styles. And they all have to work in one level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
None of that shit. So because of that, they decided not to do that. They changed how they approach stories. I said how, you know, I get played Unleashed, probably about a year after it had come out at that point. It was in the bargain bin, which is sad to think about. A game that was only a year old. It was in the GameStop's bargain bin for me. But that game to me felt like what I wanted from Sonic games, because the story was focused on Sonic and Tails. There ain't a Knuckles in sight. I like Knuckles. There ain't a Knuckles in sight. There's no Rouge. There's no Shadows. I do miss Shadow. This is the last time he was playable, besides he was DLC in Forces. But it's the last time he was playable in like what was really meant to be his game. I would like to see him again, but, you know, we needed to move on. Sonic Colors, Sonic and Tails. Generations, Sonic and Tails, and Sonic and Tails save his friends, but we don't see them. You know what I mean? Then Forces brings them all back together, and it's like the Saturday morning cartoon for, you know, 6-year-olds version of Resistance and War, which is dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lost World was in there, and they did the Sonic Boom, and I understand all that stuff, but like the trajectory of the franchise up until Sonic 06 was more characters. Because we had the racing games where they introduced like Jet the Hawk and then all those people, you know. We had handheld games that were freely introducing new characters. You had your comic line going on there with the, you know, people like to hate on the multiple Sonic friends. And the only reason why is because they're indicative of bad gameplay in bad Sonic games, or at least mediocre Sonic games. Sonic 06 is a terrible game. So that's the outlier, right? I would not be against seeing this return, this idea. I like the idea of you have multiple parallel stories. You don't know bits of what's going on over there while you're in this story until you play that one, and then you piece it together. I actually really like that. They've never done it well in any of these games.
I don't trust them
like that
at this point, you know.
Sonic Frontiers has actual writers that worked on the Sonic comics, which are just a storytelling medium and not gameplay. So I would like to see writers write a story like this. I would love to see a new game that has Sonic and Shadow, at the very least, 2 completely different sets of levels, and their stories intertwine, and they team up at the end. I would love to see that in a video game. They need to go slow. They need
to. I don't trust them yet to execute that.
Yeah.
But I feel like with what we're hoping, before we even heard what Sonic Frontiers was going to be and what we kind of pitched to our dream selves of what Sonic could be, and they've actually coincidentally did some of the stuff that we asked for.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're going to do an episode on Sonic Frontiers at some point. We're also hoping to do kind of like a check-in once in a while in some of our episodes. But just, and the reason I keep bringing this up is just because of the timing of everything. Is I feel like it could be a stepping stone. I feel like they went Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. I think they went too quick into it. That's always been my thing, where they try to put in too many characters, try to do too much gameplay styles, like you mentioned. And then Sonic 2006 was just like, they escalated to a point where it imploded on itself.
Yeah.
So they're not ready there. I think we now have more technology where they can do more things and get away with more stuff.
Maybe they have, we don't know this for a fact, it appears like they have a bigger budget to work with. You know, they're spending more times on Frontiers than they spent, like, a little under 2 years on Sonic 06. And then also on Unleashed, and also on Colors, and then Generations, and then Lost World, and then Forces. You know what I mean? But it looked like they had more time to develop Sonic Frontiers, and, you know, we'll talk about that, you know, when we get to there. But I would love to see a Sonic team that is giving a budget and time to prove that they can handle it. Because I feel like a game like this, I can chalk down half the issues come from the fact that they try to hammer in a physics engine, which borks. So many decisions had to be changed because of that alone. But still, that could have been ironed out if they had more time, because that's the main thing. If they decided, you know what, we don't care about his 15th birthday, then who knows? They would have released the game in maybe 2009.
He's not an actual person.
He's not real.
He won't know.
You know?
He won't know.
And also, 15 is such a weird year to celebrate. 10 and 25, maybe 30, maybe 20, 15.
I mean, I'm glad they didn't, because Sonic's anniversary was what, last year, and we didn't get anything. Remember, they were supposed to do this big thing, and they didn't. But I think that was smart.
Yeah, because in an alternate universe, they would have forced Frontiers to launch last year,
or something much different, of some sort. But yeah, I think it seems that maybe Sega has learned a lesson. Maybe they couldn't fix the problems. They had other problems, like you mentioned, over time, and maybe they're finally realizing how to fix those. I think with the movie and everything, maybe it's easy to be hopeful. But playing this makes me actually hopeful in a way. I don't know how that works, but it does. Yeah, I hope that they can look at this game and realize what not to do, and I think they have for the most part. So
yeah. Well, that's Sonic 2006 for you folks. Rock bottom, as it were. Hopefully we never see a Sonic game as bad as this. No, I also know Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is considered to be just as bad, so maybe one day we'll play that. But
we'll have to see.
It's one of the few Wii U games I don't even own. So we'll see. But yeah, this was episode 150. We're just going to say this right now. If you don't watch our show on YouTube, why don't you watch it next time on YouTube? You can follow us on Twitter at Sonic Movie Show, on TikTok at Sonic Movie Show. Devin is on Twitter at CursonaFun. I'm on Twitter, Ethan, at Ethan Absolutely. Let us know what you think about this game. And if you have some sort of it's not that bad type of statement to give us, go into detail. Because I see some of these online sometimes of 06 isn't that bad. And either it's they haven't played it in over a decade, and so they have remembered some bad stuff, but a lot of what they liked. And I don't mean to say that they are not critical thinkers, or they have media literacy, but maybe that's the case. So if you do have the opinion of it's not that bad, and your opinions don't come from this fan remake thing, and it's the actual game itself, write them out in detail. I'm curious to know an actual defender of this game as it exists in its current form, what they would think. So let us know. And if you hate the game, please dogpile it on. I want to read those too. So.
Stroke our egos the whole time. Yeah. Like, wow, you guys are so right at every point.
No one has said this game is bad before besides you two right here on that podcast.
Wow, so radical.
Because
it
is a horse people like to beat after it's already dead. I understand. We are not.
And I hope we didn't come across as that either. I don't think it was a lack of effort or whatnot. I think it's a lack of execution and bad decision making.
And your staff got cut in half, and then Sonic's creator left and took the best people probably with him. So I will never.
The soul of Sonic.
I will never call Sonic Team in any form lazy. I will never do that.
Yeah.
So
they take up a lot of shit. I thought Sonic fans were the wholesome, and I realized in the last couple of years doing this show and just seeing Twitter and on Reddit that y'all hate Sonic teams too much. We agreed with a lot of people were saying with delaying Sonic Frontiers potentially based off what we saw, but there was just straight up people being malicious and just it's a video game.
Yep.
You'll be fine.
Sonic Team and Game Freak are the two studios that the fans of the games that they make want them to not make them, and they want Sonic Team to give Sonic to someone else. They want Game Freak to give Pokemon to someone else. Shut up. You don't know how games are made. We don't either. They do, though. They can make their damn video game. You don't know what you're talking about. And if you do know what you're talking about, right at the show. We're going to see you next week for another episode.
For Sonic Team, we'd like
oh my God, I would love to have you as an interview. Tell the world your thoughts on Sonic 06. We'll
Were
see
you there when Sonic 06 was made? Let us know. You were at Ground Zero.
Yeah, honestly, yes. That's what it is. It releases on Xbox 360, and then like, the Hedgehog has hit another console.
Oh my god!
It's
So
the PS3
fucked.
version. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Sonic Movie Show. Have a fantastic day.